Chapter 31. The Winterfell Banquet. Winterfell Great Hall. The welcoming banquet to receive the king was extraordinarily lively, and everyone in Winterfell was present. Duke Stark and his wife were on the high platform with the king and queen. The princes and princesses and the duke's children sat in lower positions. Sansa accompanied the crown prince, Arya accompanied Prince Tommen, Robb accompanied Princess Myrcella, and Bran was responsible for taking care of his 3-year-old brother, Rickon. As for the bastard Jon, Lady Catelyn was unwilling to let him insult the royal family, and only let him stay with the young attendants at the end of the hall. The king laughed loudly. "Ned, how about it? Was my appearance today shocking enough? It's so damn enjoyable. King's Landing, what a good name, created by my son." Hearing Robert call his nickname, Eddard gave a forced smile to his brother and king, Robert. The conversation with the king in the underground tomb in the afternoon made Eddard unhappy. The responsibility of the hand of the king is too great. He will issue orders on behalf of the king, exercise authority, command the 3 armies, and be in charge of justice. In the event of the king's absence, illness, or other emergencies, he will even sit on the Iron Throne and directly rule the country. In comparison, Eddard preferred the title of Duke of Winterfell. But a brother who grew up and fought with him asked him for help, and it was also an appointment from the king. How could he refuse? And the king even suggested that Sansa and Prince Joffrey get engaged. Eddard was very worried. Joffrey silently paid attention to Duke Stark and his wife. The success or failure of this trip to Winterfell is of great importance. The future development path depends on the Stark family's position. Now it seems that the plot is developing well. Eddard Stark did not refuse to go south on the spot, which means success. Some hesitation will lean towards denial, and some hesitation is equivalent to agreement. The next focus is on the next generation of the Stark family. If you can win over a few little wolves, at least the north will become a stable rear in a few years. Joffrey looked at the few little wolves around him. Robb tried his best to maintain his composure and politeness in every move. Arya could hardly stay idle, and Bran listened to the stories told by the knights below while taking care of little Rickon. Sansa's eyes darted away whenever they met his, and all her girlish thoughts were written on her face. Joffrey shook his head and flicked his golden hair, letting the warm firelight fully present his delicate face in Sansa's eyes. "Sansa, it's too hot here. I would like to know more about this ancient and great castle. Would you like to take me out for a walk?" Sansa hardly thought about what the prince said. "I am willing." She only felt that her dream had come true. Joffrey very carefully helped Sansa up, and moved step by step towards the gate along the crowded aisle. Many people noticed this scene on the edge of the high platform. Except for Eddard Stark, who moved his lips, everyone else only gave teasing eyes and kind smiles. Jon was thinking about Joffrey's real intention. Just as the two were about to cross the gate, Jon heard the Crown Prince's voice. "There is a place for you in King's Landing." In a simple sentence, Jon thought of the conversation he had with the Crown Prince in the afternoon. "King's Landing, can I go to King's Landing too? Are most of the Night's Watch scum and villains? What can I do in King's Landing?" Uncle Benjen Stark nudged him with his arm. "Jon, what are you thinking about?" Jon hesitated for a moment. He had already decided to tell his uncle that he was going to join the Night's Watch, but now... "It's nothing, uncle." Ghost gently gnawed on his hand. He fiddled with its fluffy fur and didn't eat anything else. At this time, Winterfell was particularly quiet. A door seemed to separate two worlds. The inside was lively and restless, and the outside was cold and lonely. What a dark and lonely city! Sansa trembled slightly and exhaled a breath of hot air, which turned into white mist and dissipated in the cold air. Joffrey considerately untied his wool cloak and put it on her. The golden cloak of the crowned stag covered her cloak with the dire wolf emblem, just like the solemn ceremony of changing cloaks at a wedding. Sansa was intoxicated by the warmth and fantasy. The atmosphere was very good. Joffrey hugged the dazed girl tightly, and the two snuggled together in the ice and snow to keep warm. I don't know how long it took before Sansa shyly came back to her senses. "Joffrey." She wanted to push Joffrey away, but she was afraid that her prince would misunderstand. "Let's go back to the hall, it's so dark outside, you can't see anything, it's really scary." Joffrey didn't want to waste time at the banquet. He picked up a torch and put his other hand around Sansa. "Don't be afraid, with me here, no ghosts or goblins can get close. With no one else around, we can just say some heartfelt words." He can guarantee that he has absolute affection for Sansa. He is infatuated with his beautiful girl, pure and innocent, and has the powerful and ancient Stark family as her dowry. Who dares to say that he doesn't love Sansa? The two walked slowly through the castle in the dark night. The snow underfoot made a regular rustling sound, and the torch crackled, reflecting the small space within a few meters. In the silence and darkness, the two people felt each other's presence even more. Sansa had a kind of illusion that the world seemed to be only so big, with only two people who deeply loved each other. I really hope this road will be longer. They stopped at a windless corner. The faint fragrance emanating from Sansa's maroon hair quickly filled the surrounding area. Joffrey stared affectionately at the girl's blue eyes. Sansa, the first time I saw you, I only thought I saw a beautiful and noble princess. You can't just let the North have you. You should become the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms and let the whole world see the true beauty. Sansa's face was rosy, and her eyes were as crystal clear as a pool of spring water, as if she was in a dream. Joffrey gently stroked the girl's long hair. Gods bless you. My beautiful princess, our fathers have decided to betroth us. I only feel sincere happiness for this. Sansa, my queen of love and beauty, are you willing to be my wife? How could a girl who yearns for love refuse? Gods! Joffrey, my prince, of course I am willing. Two pairs of eyes attracted each other and sometimes hid. The two people got closer and closer. Sansa felt the prince's hot breath and hot love. This can only be a beautiful dream. The prince's lips pressed over, and a burst of tingling lightning flashed through Sansa's body, shattering her thoughts, and only the feeling on the tip of her tongue remained clear. Sansa instantly lost all her strength. Before she completely softened, the prince's strong arms embraced her, followed by an even more violent storm. She tasted the prince. Mellow and warm, full of vitality, the breath of fire, the taste of steel, and the mysterious touch of flesh that is tempting to fall into hell. A fascinating feeling that she could never have imagined in her dreams. This is not a dream. In the blur of consciousness, she confirmed this undeniable fact, and there was only wild joy in her heart. Gods bless you. Let this moment last forever. Chapter 32, Martial Arts Performance at the Training Grounds. Sansa could hardly believe it was her from last night. She had actually been so bold, only meeting the prince for a few hours before doing that kind of thing. It was truly embarrassing. After a night of calming down, Sansa returned to being a reserved lady. Today, she didn't dare to be alone with the prince again. But being apart for even a moment made her heart feel empty, and nothing seemed interesting. She could only hide by the window of the enclosed bridge, gazing adoringly at her prince. This place connected the main castle and the armory, and the windows offered a panoramic view of the entire training grounds. It would have been even better if Arya wasn't being so annoying nearby. Sansa helplessly glanced at her younger sister, who was shouting excitedly. On the training grounds of Winterfell, Prince Tommen and Bran Stark were sparring with wooden swords. Both boys were wearing sturdy protective leather armor, and Roderick Castle, the white-bearded master-at-arms of Winterfell, was acting as the referee. Sansa's gaze was solely fixed on Prince Joffrey, who was watching from the sidelines. Bran and Tommen had been clumsily fighting for quite a while, and finally, the slightly heavier Tommen fell first, with Bran raising his wooden sword in a victorious smile. Arya on the bridge also cheered for Bran. Sir Roderick looked towards the sidelines. Your Highness, Crown Prince, Robb, would you like another round? The attendants and knights around Joffrey laughed. In the previous match, the Crown Prince had held an overwhelming advantage, and if it hadn't been a match to first blood, Robb would have lost quite badly. Joffrey stopped his subordinates in politeness. Let's change opponents. Theon Greyjoy, already 19 years old, was very surprised. Me? Prince Joffrey, have you chosen the wrong person? Joffrey was full of confidence. The suffering he had endured under Jaime's training for over a month had not been in vain. Not to mention the effort, the spiritual growth brought by the runes had also greatly enhanced his learning talent. He was confident that his skills were no less than the renowned Kingslayer. Although his experience might be lacking, his physical advantages were enough to make up for it. The magical energy produced daily by the growth rune was making him stronger, and his increasingly powerful mental strength allowed him to control his body better. Even without those obvious or hidden magics, his current physical attacks were enough to defeat any normal human. Joffrey and Theon walked onto the training grounds. Both sides fastened their protective gear, held wooden blunt swords, and slowly circled each other, approaching. Everyone was looking forward to it. Theon was the oldest, with experience and skill honed over time. The Crown Prince had also defeated Robb before, so it seemed it would be another fierce battle. Joffrey decided to end the fight quickly and teach Theon a good lesson. He hadn't come here today specifically to show off, but to leave a deep impression on the minds of these future players in the Game of Thrones, making them afraid to easily oppose him, and even recruiting them for his own use. For someone like Theon, who was sensitive, insecure, and arrogant, beating him into submission was the simplest and most practical method. The two men stared intently at each other, moving their feet and approaching each other. Only 5 meters apart now. Joffrey seized the opportunity, burst forth with power, and dashed in front of his opponent, unleashing a storm of attacks. Theon only saw a blur of light. The sounds of wooden swords colliding grew denser and louder with each breath, and people seemed to hear the groans of the wooden swords before they broke. Theon relied on his experience to desperately grip his wooden sword and parry. Impossible. Theon couldn't believe it. Although this arrogant prince was tall, he was only 12 years old after all. How could he possess such monstrous strength? But his arms were already numb from the impact, and his steps were constantly retreating. Crack! Theon's wooden sword shattered into several pieces, and he staggered back, then stood there dumbfounded. The Crown Prince's sword was across his throat. Sansa on the bridge revealed a touching smile. I knew it, my prince is definitely the most amazing. Arya pursed her lips. On the training grounds, those who had come with Joffrey applauded and cheered unrestrainedly, and Stark's subordinates were also exclaiming in amazement. Worthy of being King Robert's son, the demon of the Trident River has a successor. King Robert's warhammer is world-renowned, and it seems that His Highness the Crown Prince will also inherit his father's fame, and the Seven Kingdoms will surely prosper even more in the future. Theon Greyjoy was completely stunned. Although he was now living under someone else's roof, often subjected to ridicule and scorn, Theon knew that he was not completely useless. I am the heir of the Iron Islands, a tough Ironborn. My archery, my swordsmanship. Even Robb can't beat me. But now, I lost to a 12-year-old arrogant brat? Theon felt that even his last bit of dignity had been trampled underfoot. Various emotions in his heart overwhelmed his mind, and at this moment, he forgot all sense of hierarchy and order. Switch to real swords. Do you dare to fight with real swords? Theon roared madly. Sir Roderick immediately reprimanded him. Theon, have you gone mad? Using real swords is too dangerous, only blunt swords are allowed for sparring. Accept it when you lose. Robb also frowned. Calm down, Theon, don't offend His Highness the Crown Prince. Most of the others watched coldly. Joffrey didn't mind. It doesn't matter, if Theon wants to see a real sword fight, I'm naturally happy to oblige. Theon Greyjoy smiled with a distorted expression. Joffrey glanced at him. Just a friendly reminder, my sword is not ordinary, it can beat you on its own. Don't blame me if your sword breaks. The Hound on the sidelines immediately brought Joffrey's dragon flame over. Everyone's eyes turned to look. Joffrey reached out his right hand and grasped the hilt of dragon flame. Amidst the pleasant, cold sound of metal friction, a streak of bright white light grew out of thin air from the scabbard. The sunlight obscured its face. Dragon flame lowered itself and entered its master's shadow, and the sword finally appeared before everyone. People were immediately captivated. The dark, mysterious patterns, the faint, flickering scarlet light. Valyrian steel sword. No, a more beautiful and noble sword than that. Theon, who was already not favored, had now completely lost people's attention. Robb and the others began to dissuade Theon again. Theon also felt the shadow of defeat, but how could he back down now? No matter the outcome, he had to continue. After urging for a long time, Theon finally received his sword from an attendant. Joffrey stood still, leisurely watching Theon cautiously advance and retreat, and even had the leisure to wave to Sansa on the bridge. Sansa exclaimed awe and shrank back inside the stone wall outside the window. How could the prince see this side? Arya giggled at her silly sister. The audience in the training grounds had already grown impatient, and they booed, telling Theon to either attack quickly or admit defeat. Theon took a deep breath, rushing towards Joffrey as if he was about to jump off a cliff. Dragon flame danced in the air, and people saw a fiery red veil fluttering to meet Theon's steel sword. Clang, clatter. The upper half of the steel sword fell to the ground, and Theon only lasted a few breaths before the half of the short sword in his hand also lost control and returned to the ground. The ending was without suspense. But people were still shocked by the sharpness of dragon flame. If a war were to happen, how much blood and life would it absorb on the battlefield? It was unimaginable. Joffrey sheathed his sword. Robb, Jon, and Theon were all there. It was the right time. Just sparring isn't very interesting. Single combat should be left to the soldiers. I've thought of a game that might be more suitable for us. Chapter 33. Joffrey's game of king had begun. Robb Stark and Theon Greyjoy played the roles of two opposing lords. Bran Stark, Jon Snow, Roderick Castle, and 4 others played the roles of knights, each serving one of the 2 lords. 77 spectators were roped in to play the roles of soldiers, each serving under one of the 7 knights. Everyone owed allegiance to the king. The king spoke. "What petitions do those assembled before me have?" All the players became serious. After hearing the Crown Prince's explanation of the game's rules, no one thought it was just a simple game for entertainment. Robb was the first to speak. "Your Majesty, your vassal Stark requests a territorial judgment." With 4 knights sworn to him, and being in Winterfell, the Stark family's seat, he undoubtedly had a greater advantage than Theon. Greyjoy has seized a knight's territory belonging to Stark. Stark demands that Greyjoy return it. Each lord had 3 opportunities to initiate a challenge. The challenged party could counter once without using up a challenge opportunity. Robb initiated the first round of challenges against Theon. Victory would mean that one of Theon's knights and 11 soldiers would be transferred to his side. Defeat would result in no reward, and the king would impose a random punishment. Theon naturally wouldn't submit directly. He also stepped forward to petition, "Your Majesty, this is slander from Stark. Greyjoy demands a trial by combat." Joffrey nodded. "Trial by combat is permitted. Stark and Greyjoy will each designate a knight to fight." Robb designated Sir Roderick Castle, the master-at-arms. Theon looked at Jon, with whom he usually didn't get along. "Jon, you wouldn't deliberately lose, would you?" Jon snorted unhappily. "I still have some honor, respected lord." Jon didn't go back on his word. He did his best. The swordsmanship and physique he had painstakingly trained since childhood were his greatest assets over the years, and he defeated the experienced Sir Roderick. Robb's challenge failed. Joffrey didn't punish him. Theon decided to counter, "Your Majesty, Stark has seized 2 knights' territories belonging to Greyjoy. Greyjoy demands that Stark return them." Theon raised the stakes. Most of those present were from Winterfell, and some of Theon's men were already somewhat unhappy. Robb didn't demand a trial by combat. He knew Jon's martial prowess, and continuing that way wouldn't lead to victory. Voting was the only option. "Your Majesty, Stark is innocent. I request a Great Council be convened." Joffrey agreed. Great Council, another form of judgment in the king's game, where the 77 soldiers present would vote on the issue. Each knight now had 11 soldiers. The decision of 7 or more soldiers had to be adopted by the knight, otherwise, the knight could choose to agree, disagree, or abstain. The final 7 votes would determine the ultimate outcome. Before the voting began, the 2 lords could speak to win the support of the soldiers. The lords may begin their speeches. Robb was very confident. He only said one sentence, "Please support me, everyone." Indeed, this was Winterfell. Theon was even more aware that he seemed destined to taste defeat and ridicule again. This game is unfair. But where in the world is there fairness? Isn't Winterfell just like this game? He fell into pain. "I am the heir of the Iron Islands, the son of the Kraken. I am a resilient Ironborn." "Am I? My father is Lord Balon Greyjoy of the Iron Islands, but his face has long been blurred in my memory, replaced by the face and words of Duke Eddard. My motto is 'We do not sow,' but now I am in the north, where winter is coming. My god is the cruel drowned god, what is dead may never die, but rises again, harder and stronger. Now I am praying to the gods of the green lands. My belonging is the sea, the longship, but now I have forgotten the salt taste of the sea. Who am I, after all? Would Stark accept me?" Theon tasted the metallic and bitter taste in his mouth. He only felt his soul constantly falling, straight into the dark and crazy abyss. It was neither Winterfell nor Pike of the Iron Islands, but a place of unknowing and unconscious non-existence. Joffrey poured his vast spirit into his eyes, and his words were tinged with magic. He only said, "Greyjoy, speak." Theon couldn't help but raise his head. The Crown Prince's eyes were beckoning him to look over. Gods, what kind of monster lives in there? Calm warmth hid a storm that could sweep the world, unpredictable yet unwavering, making people both respectful and fearful, loving and hating, impossible to forget for a lifetime. Like a supreme king. King. Yes, king. Theon's face was flooded with fanatical emotions, and his eyes shone with a mixture of hope and despair. Theon prostrated himself on the ground, as if on a pilgrimage. Your Supreme Majesty, Theon Greyjoy offers you unwavering loyalty. My sword, my body, my soul, everything belongs to you. Everyone was dumbfounded. Joffrey's lips curled into a wanton arc. He drew dragon flame and pressed the tip of the sword heavily on Theon's shoulder. I accept your allegiance. In the name of the seven gods, Theon of House Greyjoy, I, Joffrey Baratheon, knight you as a knight of the king's service. Remember, you must not retreat in battle. Arise, Sir Theon Greyjoy. A knighting ceremony that was so simple that it couldn't be simpler, and even somewhat unconventional, but no one dared to treat it as a joke. People could only stare blankly. Joffrey retracted dragon flame, one hand on his hip and the other holding the sword hilt. Let the voting begin. Robb's confidence was mostly lost. The 77 soldiers gradually stirred. They looked at each other, tacitly choosing to obey the greatest liege lord to whom they all owed allegiance. Robb closed his eyes. All 7 knights lost the right to choose. The soldiers under them overwhelmingly voted for the same side. The Great Council, Greyjoy won. Robb lost 2 of his knights, half of his strength, and the scales of victory tipped in favor of Theon. Theon launched an attack. Your Majesty. Stark has seized 2 knights' territories belonging to Greyjoy. Greyjoy demands that Stark return them. One more win, and Robb would be completely defeated. At this time, Robb had to face a difficult choice. Trial by combat, Jon was on the other side. The Great Council didn't seem to hold much hope now either. Do I also have to swear allegiance to win? Robb's mood was complicated, and he seemed to understand the Crown Prince's intentions. The king's game was indeed a game for the king. Jon's heart was also struggling. The perceptive him had long seen that this game was not simple. At least, the Crown Prince had the intention of making him make a decision at this time. King's Landing? The Night's Watch? It seemed that a choice had to be made now. Jon looked at the Crown Prince, and his gaze met the Crown Prince's, as if a strange force was transmitted. Jon only felt his head heat up, and he immediately knelt on one knee. Your Majesty, Jon Snow is willing to offer eternal loyalty and requests to be ennobled as a lord. People were shocked again. There was also a rule in this game: knights could request to be ennobled as lords, as long as they obtained the allegiance of another knight and 7 soldiers. Joffrey was very satisfied with the game's outcome. Chapter 34, The Empire's Minister of Finance. The next morning, Joffrey was holding a time-worn parchment scroll, reading it. Tyrion, standing beside him, broke the silence. Your Highness is in high spirits. Your game is now spreading outside. I wonder what everyone will think. This was the library tower of Winterfell, and besides the caretaker, Maester Chael, downstairs, there were only piles of ancient books and records. Joffrey had originally wanted to find some records related to magic, but they were all subjective and exaggerated historical accounts. Truth and lies were deeply buried beneath the ink, making it difficult to gain any real knowledge. Sure enough, the golden finger is more reliable. Joffrey placed the scroll back in its original position. Uncle, that's just a game. It's all just for fun. What impact could it have? Allegiance, ennoblement, it's all just rules in a game, it doesn't count. Tyrion looked at his nephew with a playful expression. I see. Tyrion seemed to have found the answer to that question. Regardless of how King Robert originally died, it seemed now that his good son would have to do it himself. The king game. If the king becomes the king, will the game still be just a game? Tyrion couldn't help but mock himself. From the past to the present, I've always been surrounded by the same kind of people. Not simple at all. May I venture to ask, Your Highness, how do you plan to rule the country in the future? Tyrion wanted a good answer. At this moment, the library tower was a quiet place. Joffrey's mind and vision hadn't detected any movements, making it suitable for whispering secrets. Uncle probably can't imagine what Westeros will look like in the future. Even I can't be completely sure. But what I can say is that it will be the strongest and most advanced empire in the world. The stag, the golden lion, the grey wolf, the rose, the trout, the falcon, the sun's pair, all the lords will prostrate themselves beneath the throne. The 7 kingdoms will become one empire. Joffrey's tone was as calm as if he were discussing what to have for dinner. There will no longer be borders within the country. All land and people will be managed by those designated by the throne. Titles and official positions will be separated. The Sunset Kingdom will become the empire on which the sun never sets, and the world will tremble before it. Ha! Tyrion only felt that he was arrogant. Joffrey smiled indifferently. And the power that creates all of this. He stretched out his right hand and pressed it against Tyrion's forehead. Invisible runes began to operate. Tyrion's mind instantly froze. He felt an existence that was more shocking than dragon bone. Joffrey moved his palm away. The mirror images of fire, information, and positioning runes, no more and no less, were just enough for Tyrion to experience the magic's wonder. The power of fire is the most direct. And using the positional sense between the positioning runes as a medium, the two could use the information runes to achieve conscious communication. Speaking of which, growth runes should make Tyrion taller, right? A dwarf turning into a giant. Joffrey left it for the future Minister of Finance. Tyrion barely calmed down. The look in his eyes towards Joffrey became more complicated and confused. Divine power? Witchcraft? Magic? That's right, magic. His mind immediately recalled Joffrey's words and actions during this period. The Red Keep treasury, secluded alleys, a giant lion spitting fire. He understood Joffrey's confidence. Having such power, and being able to share it with others. If there were no restrictions, no, as long as the restrictions weren't particularly strict, who would dare to predict what the future of Westeros would look like? Tyrion had finally understood the cause of Stannis' death. Joffrey's contact with the bastard of a prostitute back then must have been in this kind of situation. The alluring power of magic. That child didn't have heaven-defying luck. Tyrion spread out his palm, clearly feeling the flow of fire between his flesh and blood. Too hot. He quickly suppressed his excited and curious feelings, lest it brought a burning disaster to this ancient library tower. Tyrion, are you willing to be the Empire's Minister of Finance? Tyrion raised his head. The invisible, mysterious existence in his mind also allowed him to see Joffrey's position in another form. At this moment, Joffrey seemed to be in 2 worlds at the same time. What a wonderful feeling, reality or illusion. Joffrey then revealed a puzzled expression. Littlefinger isn't loyal enough. What do you think we should do with him? Cut off his head and stick it on the spear tip of the Red Keep's wall. Tyrion didn't hear Joffrey say this sentence aloud. Another invisible existence in his mind conveyed this information to him. Tyrion widened his eyes in excitement. This power, although not as swift as fire, might be more important to a country. He tried to touch that invisible existence clumsily. Heat, cold, emptiness, noise, and screams assaulted him all at once. It was as if he was taming a wild, unruly horse. Tyrion used the information rune mirror image to transmit only chaotic and disorderly thought information. Joffrey directly shielded these informational garbage. After a long while, Joffrey heard Tyrion's first clear sentence from his mind. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Joffrey was completely speechless. Stop spamming. Ah, yes, I can hear you. Isn't it amazing, exciting? Stop talking nonsense, continue. The two began a silent conversation. In my capacity as the future Minister of Finance, I suggest that we still treat Littlefinger with caution. The kingdom's finances can no longer withstand major turmoil. The debts are too high. The gold from the church and the Lannisters is easy to deal with, but the Iron Bank of Bravos in particular cannot be allowed to be in arrears. Joffrey knew the Iron Bank's methods. If he defaulted on the debt, the Iron Bank would support his enemies to take power and recover the debt. Perhaps they would even send the faceless men, who frightened the world, to assassinate him. Perhaps he wasn't afraid, but it was still annoying. Tyrion gradually adapted to this method of communication. Before, when I was investigating King's Landing's intelligence, the more I understood Littlefinger, the more I understood how deeply he was hiding. He has been the Minister of Finance for so many years, and his confidants are all over the Treasury, the Mint, the Port, the Customs, the tax farmers, the agents and other key personnel, who were mostly promoted by him. In my opinion, we should be careful. In this world, if there was anyone who used gold to arm themselves, it would be Peter Baelish, not Jaime Lannister. Joffrey remained expressionless. Perhaps. But colluding with his mistress, Lisa Tully, to murder the hand of the king, Jon Arryn, is enough for him to suffer. Why can't we just take him down directly? A network of relationships is ultimately not as reliable as power. I want to remind you. King's Landing belongs to the Iron Throne, it's mine, not Gold's. When I return to King's Landing, I will be the King of Westeros. I will not tolerate any contempt or even betrayal. The darkness of King's Landing will be completely cleansed. Tyrion, do you lack the confidence to take over? Joffrey's attitude meant iron and blood, rather than peace or trade. Tyrion smelled war and death. But he had already embarked on a path of no return. And what reason was there to refuse? As you wish, Your Majesty. Chapter 35, The King of Winterfell. King Robert, having arrived in the north, still hadn't given up his hunting hobby. For the past few days, almost every night, the main course was wild game personally hunted by the king. Wild bears, stags, wild boars with apples stuffed in their mouths. Today was even earlier. Just as dawn broke, the king dragged his good brother Eddard out. Accompanying them were Benyon Stark, Jory Castle, Theon Greyjoy, Roderick Castle, Tyrion Lannister, and others. Joffrey didn't go. For various reasons, he was currently dragging Bran and Sansa on a tour of Winterfell. The dilapidated, deserted tower suitable for clandestine meetings was, of course, not on the itinerary. His target was the mysterious, unknown underground crypt. Could the secrets of Winterfell be found there? 6 soldiers worked together to pull open the tilted, massive ironwood door. Bran led the way, Sansa linked arms with the prince, and the 3 of them descended into the depths along the winding, long stone staircase. The staircase was truly long. The space was narrow and stretched into a distant, unknowable darkness. The further down they went, the colder and more biting the air became, as if they were heading towards an icy hell. Although they carried a lantern, it seemed to only provide light and no warmth. "It's so cold," Sansa couldn't help but complain. Joffrey took out Dragon Flame, fully activating its fire magic, and warmth and light returned to their surroundings. Bran's eyes lit up instantly. "Wow, Your Highness, this sword is amazing." Joffrey laughed heartily. "Once you become a knight, Bran, how about I give you a sword that's no worse than this one?" Bran took it completely seriously. "Your Highness, you have to keep your word." "That's only natural." Bran revealed a brilliant smile. The 3 continued forward. The firelight filled the entire space, reducing much of the tomb's terrifying atmosphere. On both sides of the passage stood rows of cold stone pillars, and between the pillars sat statues of the Starks of Winterfell, all the kings of the north and the heads of the Stark family throughout the ages. Resting on their laps were iron swords to bring peace to their wandering souls, roaring dire wolves were carved at their feet, and behind them were the stone coffins containing their remains. Joffrey could see the traces of time. Many of the swords were reduced to reddish-brown dust, barely maintaining the shape of a sword. How many years had passed? He looked at the faces of the statues. The statues were rough, ancient, solemn, and dignified. He didn't know if the carved appearances were accurate, but he didn't recognize them anyway. He only knew a few names. Brandon the Builder, Brandon the Ice Eyes, Theon the Hungry Wolf, Torrhen the King who knelt. Joffrey knew. Eddard, the second son raised by the Arryn family, was truly an anomaly among the Stark lords. Eddard, who valued honor, inherited more of the Arryn families as high as honor. His winter is coming side had not fully awakened. If Brandon the Wild Wolf hadn't been burned to death by the Mad King, Eddard would have become a vassal of his elder brother instead of the ruler of the North, and the Stark family wouldn't be what it is today. Joffrey also knew. The traditional Starks inherited the blood of the dire wolf, historically wild and untamed, craving benefits like a pack of wolves thirsting for blood. Who knew what glorious deeds these statues had once accomplished, how much blood they had stained? Slowly passing by each statue, he felt as if he had already read the distant history of the Starks. Until the last statue, they stopped. A statue held a sword tightly in its palm, its face stern, with the Stark's signature long face. On either side of it were 2 statues, one male and one female, without iron swords. Further back, there were only empty spaces in the darkness. "Bran, Sansa, this is Lord Rickard, right?" Joffrey lowered his head to pay his respects to the ancestor, then greeted Eddard's elder brother Brandon and sister Lyanna as well. In a way, he owed his present circumstances to these individuals. Without them, without that wrong spring, the Targaryens might still be sitting on the Iron Throne. Successfully checked in at the underground crypt. As a fan, he should be satisfied. But he didn't see the light of magic. Do you know what's deeper inside? Joffrey planned to continue exploring. Bran remembered the various stories and legends told by Old Nan and Maester Luwin, and all the terror had now turned into curiosity. No one knows. Why don't we go take a look? There must be something. Sansa became even more frightened upon hearing this. We've been in here for so long, won't they be worried outside? Let's go back out first. Bran looked at Joffrey expectantly. Your Highness, let's go take a look, there must be something. Joffrey decided to send Sansa back first. Unexpectedly, after going up, the number of people didn't decrease but increased. The loud sound of two people running and chasing in front echoed continuously in the narrow passage, and Joffrey felt very helpless. Arya, Bran, don't get too excited, be careful not to bump into the wall. At this time, they had already passed those statues, and both sides of the passage were stone-carved empty spaces, waiting for the future deceased Starks to reside in. This section of the road was longer and had more spaces than the previous statues. Joffrey only felt that the Stark ancestors had considered things too far ahead. It was estimated that even the tombs for the next few thousand or tens of thousands of Starks were prepared, which showed how confident they were in the continuation of their family. Bran and Arya suddenly turned back. Go and see, there are so many dead people there, no, so many bones. The dozen or so soldiers next to them immediately became serious. Your Highness, let's go back to the surface. The angry spirits will not have any mercy on the living, we must ensure your safety. Joffrey certainly wouldn't retreat. They're just some bones, what's there to be afraid of? Bran and Arya were rarely quiet, and the soldiers walked cautiously in front to explore the way. Finally, there was some mysterious atmosphere of exploration. The firelight gradually pushed back the darkness ahead. Crack! A soldier made a sound under his feet, and he immediately retreated several steps and bumped into another soldier. Arya directly picked up a white piece. These are those bones, I almost tripped over them just now, luckily I reacted quickly. Bran didn't want to be outdone, I didn't trip. Joffrey squatted down to examine it carefully. The bones were very ordinary, very brittle, and there was a lot of powder on the ground. He didn't know how many years ago it was. He pressed his finger on a bone and activated the positioning rune and reconnaissance rune. Using the bone as a medium, he could locate the other bones of the same corpse and scout the surrounding environment. The vision switched back and forth between many bones, and frames of images appeared and disappeared, the complex information challenging his thinking and spirit. Finally, he saw an ancient throne. Joffrey stood up. There's nothing wrong here, the answer is ahead. After a long trek, the group passed through another unknown, empty and desolate underground hall, and ahead was a wider palace. The black stone throne was waiting quietly there. Gods! The abandoned throne in Winterfell was already incomparably ancient and majestic. That was the symbol of power of the kings of the north throughout the ages. And this throne? So huge, so cold, so pure, exuding an indescribable chilling aura. The soldiers knelt before it uncontrollably. Old gods above! This must be the throne that only the ancient King of Winter could possess. In front of the throne, Bran and Arya stood motionless, as if their souls had been captured by the black stone throne. Joffrey saw the light of magic. Chapter 36, Wolf Spirit. The throne of the King of Winter is not the end. Continuing forward, passing through long passages, ruins, dark rivers, and caves, they saw the light. The clear sky showered down bright white light, and the scene was filled with cold, strong, and battered ancient trees, dotted with patches of eternal snow. The old soldier with a rough face whispered, "This is the Wolf's Wood. The oldest and most vast forest in the north." No wonder it was still possible to breathe smoothly so deep within the crypt. After walking for a full hour, the sun had already set by the time they reached the gates of Winterfell from the ground. Duke Eddard rushed over immediately. "Where did you run off to? Do you know how worried everyone was?" The Duke turned to the side. "Vayan, go find the soldiers in the crypt. The people have been found, tell them to come up quickly." Winterfell's steward, Vayan Poole, immediately accepted the order and left. Arya shook her father's arm, her face only showing excitement. "The crypt is so deep and long, and there's a huge, huge throne." Bran couldn't help but add, "That must be the throne of the King of Winter." Duke Eddard still looked serious. "Don't worry about any throne, your mother is going crazy with worry, hurry back. Besides, Eddard glanced at Joffrey. The King of Winter has long become a story. Winterfell is now the north, and there is no king anymore. Joffrey smiled apologetically, I've troubled you, Lord Eddard. Don't blame Bran and Arya, this was all my idea. Thinking about it now, I really shouldn't have disturbed the Stark ancestors' rest. Bran was still too naive, and immediately confessed to his father in a small voice, his face red, actually, I insisted on going, father, don't misunderstand His Highness. Honesty is a good quality. Eddard patted Bran's shoulder, I don't blame you. It's good that you're back. Bran and Arya both breathed a sigh of relief. On the way back to the main castle, the two children who had successfully adventured were still proudly showing off the wonderful sights and sounds of the crypt to their father. Joffrey could feel Eddard's gaze. It seemed that Duke Stark understood who the culprit was. Presumptuously peeking into the Stark's secrets, disturbing the dead, and taking two young wolves into danger. Joffrey silently added a sound effect to this, ding, system notification, Eddard Stark's favorability 1, Winterfell reputation 1. Fortunately, his status as crown prince was a shield. As soon as he stepped into the hall, the king's laughter could be heard. Dinner indeed had a main course. The wild yak that the king had personally stabbed to death was skewered on a thick iron rod, turning in circles, and the bright grease dripped from time to time onto the charcoal fire below, igniting clusters of flames. The yak had never received so much love. Every time a layer was roasted, someone would come to cut off the right amount of meat, and then carefully brush on spicy, fragrant, or sweet seasonings on the yak's body on the grill to suit the different tastes of the nobles. Joffrey wanted spicy. The meat was quite firm, with an indescribable wild flavor, not bad. Bran came over. After a half-day of adventure, Bran felt that he was already a good friend of the Crown Prince. Your Highness, I know many places in the city that no one knows about. We can go play together later, how about it? Joffrey especially didn't want to go to the ruined tower. I'm very interested, but unfortunately, King's Landing has been urging my father to return, and I can't stay for long. I'd better leave my time to the people of the north. Joffrey changed the subject. Bran, your father will be a good hand. When we get to the south, you will definitely like the Red Keep. There are many secrets in the Dragon Pit and under the Red Keep. I only hope Lord Eddard doesn't refuse. Bran was full of hope, how could father disagree? The Dragon Pit, this legendary name immediately grabbed Bran's heart. How big must the place where dragons live be? Do dragon knights live there too? Bran seemed to see himself wearing white clothes and white armor, riding a dragon, and guarding the king. Bran remembered all the stories of the king's guard. Savion Mirror Shield from hundreds of years ago, Sir Riam Redwine, Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, Sir Eric and Sir Eric, the twin brothers who lived and died together in the Dance of the Dragons. Gerald Hightower the White Bull, Arthur Dane the Sword of the Morning, and Barry Stan the Bold. Your Highness, when you become king in the future, you must let me be a member of the King's Guard. Bran dreamed of his great knightly path. Bran, you are the future Green Seer, the three-eyed raven, Brandon Stark. Joffrey smiled, definitely. Skin changers are also called wolf spirits. These people have a special talent, able to enter and control the bodies of animals with their minds, and even continue to live in the bodies of animals after death. Legend has it that only 1 in 1,000 people has the talent of a skin changer hidden in their bodies, and only 1 in 1,000 skin changers can become a green seer. Why do most of the people in the Stark family have the talent of skin changers? How do skin changers work? Why can't the magical light be seen on Bran and others? Why would Bran be approached by the current green seer? The moment Joffrey sat on the throne of the King of Winter, all these questions had answers. The new runes revealed many historical truths. His gaze crossed the river of time to the distant past, the past when the north was still called winter. At that time, the throne was not in the dark underground. It was bathed in ice and snow and blood. Countless figures came and went under the throne, offering sacrifices, struggling or desperate, to the supreme throne. Long-faced men and women wearing heavy animal skins presided over the sacrifice. Some of them held bronze scythes, swords, and axes, cutting the throats of the sacrifices, chopping off their heads, and letting the steaming red liquid seep into the snow and flow to the throne. Some raised heavy stones, smashing the flesh and blood of the sacrifices into a pulp. Some simply placed the heads of the sacrifices next to the throne and sprinkled blood on the throne. Souls were exchanged for magic. He saw the magical light on the throne become even brighter, and sprinkled starlight into the shadows below. Not everyone had this honor. He noticed that most of the people the starlight floated to had grey eyes, black-brown hair, and long faces. Stark? These people were already leaders at that time. The starlight disappeared into the human body. He saw those people display extraordinary abilities, but he still couldn't see the magical light on their bodies. He stepped down from the throne. Looking at the throne again, those scenes dissipated with the wind, leaving only an empty black stone. He already knew the secret of the wolf spirit. There are 3 types of runes on the throne, one is a mental rune, and the other 2 are unknown. But he can now give them a name. One is a flashback rune, which allows him to see the past with the help of a medium. One is a bloodline rune, which can integrate the power of other runes into the human bloodline. Although it is weak and invisible, it is passed down from generation to generation. Isn't the weakened version of the mental rune the wolf spirit talent? The green seer can observe the past through the weirwood trees. The effect of the flashback rune is almost exactly the same, even stronger. No wonder Bran would be targeted by the green seer. The next green seer appointed by Brynden Rivers, the 3-eyed raven. Can Bran's fate not be changed? Perhaps there can be a Kingsguard wolf spirit Brandon Stark. Joffrey wanted to try. Chapter 37, The Watch of the Nameless. He was ordered to watch here. His current identity was a nameless free rider who came to the north with the king. No loyalty, only serving for money and food. This identity had its pros and cons. On one hand, he didn't have to follow a certain noble all the time, making his actions more free and concealed. But at the same time, he also lost Winterfell's trust, and many important places would not be open to him, including where his target was. He could only try his best to approach the target every day. Maester Luwin of Winterfell. It was said that someone was secretly framing the noble Lannisters. His task was to monitor the target, not to let the vicious villain pass on a few words of slander to Maester Luwin, and even more so not to let Stark hear such rumors. This was not easy. The tower where the Maester was located was close to the city wall, not far from the bustling Hunter's Gate. The bell tower, kitchen, kennel, and stables were also nearby. It was okay during the day. Many people would be active in Winterfell, and he was not conspicuous. But what was the use? The vicious villain would not strike during the day, and his battlefield must be at night. What reason could there be to stay here at night? There was none. He could only hide his tracks. Fortunately, he had undergone rigorous training and knew how to sneak quietly without alarming people or animals. The only thing he wasn't confident in hiding from was those dire wolves. Every time he approached those weird things, he was always frightened back by their eyes. He had no doubt that as long as he took a few more steps forward, those wolf cubs would pounce on him directly. Fortunately, those wolves were all kept by their wolf master, even sleeping in the distant main castle. God's bless. Tonight's operation was easy. He only saw 3 guards before climbing onto the hidden stone eaves outside the window of this 2-story building. He knew it was because the Crown Prince and 2 little wolves had gone deep into the underground tomb, and Catelyn Tully had sent a large number of people in to search, and they were probably just coming out now. The defense on this road was naturally much less. Thank the Crown Prince. Just as he thought of this, a gust of cold wind blew, and he almost couldn't help but cough. Winterfell at night was really too cold. Born on the summer coast of the Sunset Sea, he had never experienced such severe cold. He tried to stretch his limbs and stick to the wall under him. The hot springs under Winterfell flowed in the walls, and wisps of heat seeped out of the stones, giving him only comfort. So amazing! He thought of that glass garden, which could actually grow fruits and vegetables and bloom beautiful flowers. It was said to be as warm as spring in the south. The target in the room stood up, and he quickly held his breath, burying himself in the dark corner. The target took a book and sat back down. The target fell asleep on the desk. He was not surprised. The old maester reading and writing under the candlelight often worked late into the night, and it was normal to take a nap. He was just a little frustrated. There had been no movement in these days of surveillance, and he began to wonder whether the position Tyrion had arranged for him was important or not. After all, more than a dozen other companions also had their own goals. Although Maester Luwin should be one of the few people Stark trusted the most, and the main castle was heavily guarded, the probability of someone coming to Maester Luwin to pass on a message was high, but the fact was that he had not found anything. Alas! Joffrey on the other side was also very helpless. He didn't know if his requirements were too high, or if the Lannisters' intelligence capabilities were indeed insufficient. In short, more than a month ago, Tyrion told him a dozen names. These people were used by Tywin to prevent someone from provoking the relationship between the Lion and the Grey Wolf. In other words, Joffrey still had to deal with Lisa Tully's secret letter turmoil in Winterfell. He had finally won the favor of a few little wolves, and the Stark family was about to become a solid ally. How could a letter ruin all this? That hateful Littlefinger is the source of all evil. Although he knew that the Lannisters were prepared, he was not completely relieved. Every night, he used mental runes and reconnaissance runes to pay attention to the situation of Maester Luwin and the Eddard couple, fearing that he would accidentally miss the secret letter and fail. Fortunately, he didn't need a long sleep to restore his spirit now, otherwise he would have died suddenly long ago. Even so, the night was still very difficult. His only adjustment was to observe these few targets himself. Duke Stark and his wife were energetic. This Lannister secret agent, whose real name was unknown, could stay prone for the whole night. He was a talent. Maester Luwin was a typical maester. The grey-haired and grey-eyed skinny old man had no personal entertainment, and was busy all day reading letters, writing letters, reading books, feeding ravens, and completing various tasks assigned by the Duke. After watching Maester Luwin's daily life these days, Joffrey couldn't help but mourn for the second sons of the Westeros nobles. In order not to have too many contradictions in the family inheritance, the second sons who did not have the right to inherit mostly became maesters, monks, and night watchmen. These professions all require them not to marry or have children, and to give up fiefs and titles. Even the King's Guard, which Bran dreamed of since he was a child, the most honorable existence among knights, also happened to be unable to marry and have children. It can be seen how much the noble lords value the complete inheritance of the family territory. Joffrey decided to fight for the rights of the second sons. The more divided and weaker the noble power is, the more at ease the king can live. A figure suddenly broke into Joffrey's perception field. Joffrey immediately cheered up. Finally here? The figure in the vision walked one step at a time, watching the surrounding movements from time to time, obviously not an ordinary passerby. The figure was holding a delicately carved wooden box, containing a lens, and a letter in the interlayer. Joffrey watched him walk towards the Maester's tower step by step. Didn't that secret agent find out? Joffrey turned his vision back to the secret agent. This guy was actually asleep at this time. This luck was too bad, right? The ravens in the rookery suddenly flew up in groups, silently hovering over the tower. Something was wrong. Joffrey felt something. Three-eyed raven? He quickly used the information runes to weave a dream for the secret agent. The secret agent suddenly woke up in shock. I fell asleep? And had two strange dreams? He believed that his professionalism would not lead to such a mistake, but at this time he had no time to think about the strangeness of it. A figure appeared in front of his target. The figure quietly put down a wooden box and was about to leave. The target opened his eyes. The figure immediately fled frantically. He waited quietly, until the guy ran a few meters below him. He clenched his dagger and jumped down. A throat cut with one knife. A perfect strike, but he didn't succeed. He looked at Maester Luwin on the tower side. The old maester had already picked up the wooden box. He had no choice but to go over and end it all. The crows became more and more irritable, gradually making hoarse and sharp cries. Joffrey encountered an invisible enemy. He looked at Bran's bedroom. Bran was sleeping very quietly, and a strange force lingered around him. Three-eyed raven. Joffrey added this damn thing to the blacklist. Provoking Bran, and daring to disturb my subordinates from doing business, alienating the feelings of the lion and the wolf. You're done. Chapter 38, Bran's Dream. Am I floating towards the sky, or falling? Where am I? Bran felt the world he was in. Not with his eyes, nor his nose, ears, or skin, but with intangible thought. He floated in a weightless, colorless, and featureless void. Is this darkness or light? It seemed to have nothing, yet it seemed to be filled with everything. Am I breathing? Can I breathe? It was a strange feeling. Here, you didn't have to do anything, nothing changed, only thoughts remained. Can I create something? The blank canvas was suddenly stained with a grey patch, which in an instant expanded and contracted to fill the entire world. This became a world of grey mist. Bran gradually understood. This was a dream. Bran didn't remember having such a dream before, but he felt a familiarity with the surrounding grey mist. Strangely, he was somewhat afraid of this mist. Everything was clearly so peaceful. Bran didn't think he was so timid. It was just a dream, what danger could there be? The grey mist suddenly churned and surged. Countless clouds rushed towards Bran, and he was submerged in an even denser sea of mist. Bran felt a burst of dizziness, and then he knew. He was falling, faster and faster, as if there was no end. Fly! A voice sounded from somewhere. Fly up quickly, you must not fall to the ground. Bran saw a blurry ground appear below the grey mist. Although it was far away, it seemed to be gradually approaching him. What would happen if I fell to the ground? Bran started to panic. Who are you? I can't fly. I am here. The voice was much clearer, as if it was right next to his ear. Bran saw it. A raven circled around him. He wanted to reach out his hand, but he couldn't get close to it no matter what. This is just a dream, I won't fall to the ground. Bran consoled himself. The raven retorted annoyingly, no. If you fall, you will die, you must fly up. The ground was getting closer and closer. Bran heard the roaring wind, and the grey mist made his cheeks ache, almost suffocating him. The grey mist in his eyes had turned into grey rivers, even fleeting grey streamers. It's so high. So fast. It was 10,000 times more dangerous than jumping from the second-story tower. Will I die? He was about to cry. But I can't fly. The raven landed calmly next to his hand. I'm hungry, do you have any corn? Bran hurriedly reached into his pocket to fumble around, thankfully. He opened his palm. A handful of golden corn kernels appeared, falling along with him. The raven hopped onto his hand in a few steps and began to peck at them. 1 bite, 2 bites, 3 or 4 bites. The raven finally said again, I have wings, and you have yours too. You can't see them, but they exist. You are too afraid, fear makes your wings shrivel. Stop binding them, let them stretch, and the wind will naturally carry you to fly. Bran listened carefully to every word, still not quite understanding. The raven said, look down. Bran glanced downwards, and an indescribable feeling seized every inch of his flesh. The distant, blurry ground had turned into Winterfell. Even seeing Winterfell from the high tower was not as astonishing as it was now. He saw Maester Luwin lying in a pool of blood in the darkness, and a shadowy figure was quietly moving away. No. The scene changed to the Godswood in the sunlight. His father was scooping up the black water by the small lake in the forest, washing away the bloodstains on ice, while his mother, standing to the side, seemed full of sorrow and fear. His father and mother left, and the black water pool became a calm mirror again, reflecting the tall, pale reflection of the weirwood tree. The leaves rustled in the cold wind. Bran saw the reflection of the weirwood tree in the black water open its blood-red eyes and look over. He hurried to avoid it. Then, he saw the sleeping faces of his older brothers and sisters. Deep, dark shadows stood in front of their beds, one with a terrifying face, one wearing dazzling golden armor, and another taller and stronger faceless giant. He looked north again and saw the wall of the end shimmering like blue crystal. Beyond the wall was the boundless ice and snow, forests, frozen rivers, and desolate ice plains. He kept looking north, and a layer of light appeared at the end of the world, and the heart of winter in the light curtain stung his eyes and brought him to tears. Winter is coming. The raven whispered on his shoulder, you have a mission. Why me? Bran looked puzzledly at the raven on his shoulder, and the raven also looked at him. It originally had 3 eyes, and the third eye was filled with a kind of terrifying knowledge. The 3-eyed raven only said, fly. Bran was still falling, falling. He looked down again and only saw ice and snow, cold, and death. The frozen wasteland was filled with jagged blue and white ice needles, which shot towards him like flying spears, covered with human skeletons. Will I also join these skeletons? Father, save me. Desperate fear enveloped him. Can a man still be brave when he is afraid? He heard his father's voice, a man can only be brave when he is afraid. Now is the time, Bran. The 3-eyed raven urged, spread your arms and fly, or fall to your death. The ice needles screamed and stretched out their devil claws towards him. Bran stretched out his arms. The cold wind blew across his invisible wings. He flew up. He flew towards the sky, the terrifying ice needles gradually receded, and the world below became smaller and smaller. This feeling is great. I can fly. He shouted happily. I know. The 3-eyed raven fluttered its wings and flew in front of Bran's forehead. The ancient throne stimulated Bran's bloodline, and Bran's soul had begun to awaken, so it had to act in advance. Bran, we will become one. Its wings flapped his cheeks, slowing him down and obscuring his vision. He couldn't help but sway in the air. Bran felt its gaze fixed on the center of his brow. Fear struck him again. Crack! The boundless sky was torn in two. Roar! The giant beast after the fire let out a long cry, and the howling wind swept the entire world with 10,000 feet of fire snakes. The three-eyed raven tried hard to flap its wings, but was still blown thousands of miles away by the storm, its whole body burning with red, blue, and white flames. But Bran was unscathed. He raised his head. Dragons and giants occupied the entire sky. The true Dragon Knight. That dragon was more majestic than Black Dread Balerion, and larger than Viagar. That giant wore white armor and a white robe, and also wore a pure white mask on his face, holding aloft a peerless sword as black as smoke and as red as blood. Is that drag on fire? The three-eyed raven finally extinguished the flames on its body. It spread its wings, and its body immediately became hundreds and thousands of times larger. Its voice was still hoarse and grating, "You shouldn't have appeared." The giant pointed the tip of his sword at the raven. "But I'm here." Three-eyed raven. The giant lifted his mask, revealing a face that Bran knew and trusted. "Your Highness." "It's me." Bran saw the crown prince swing his sword at the raven. "Don't trust this raven. I know these monsters, it wants to take over your body." Bran immediately believed it. It really was a monster. The grey mist gradually faded, replaced by pure white rain mist. The rain mist surrounded Bran joyfully. He understood, this is my dream world, my power. The rain mist joined the battle, trying to interfere with the three-eyed raven's vision and erode those black feathers. The crown prince's dragon spewed out a vast, sea-like torrent of scorching lava. The crown prince raised the dragon fire, which shone like the sun, and red light, black light, white light, and silver light all poured into the dragon fire and shot towards the embarrassed raven. The world began to shatter. The three-eyed raven yelled and then turned into dust. Bran cheered. The crown prince smiled at him. "This is a secret, don't tell anyone." The world vanished. Bran returned to the real darkness. After a few breaths, he opened his eyes, turned over, and Summer was lying there, staring at him steadily. That really was a dream, wasn't it? Chapter 39, Farewell to Winterfell. The death of Maester Luwin cast a shadow over Winterfell. This grey-haired, thin old man had served diligently for decades, and he had delivered every one of Lady Catelyn's children. He had become a part of Winterfell. Now, Winterfell had forever lost a respectable maester, lost the old man reading in the rookery, lost the teacher who told stories to the children and urged them to study. He was a good man. He was the most dedicated maester, upholding his oath and doing his duty throughout his life. Winterfell will remember his contributions. People will miss his kindness, wisdom, and character. The friars recited prayers for the old man lying in the coffin. May he rest in peace in heaven. Maester Luwin was gradually buried into the cold, dark earth. Duke Eddard and his wife stood in the front, and all the Stark vassals bowed their heads in silence. Bran and Arya cried the most sadly. Sansa, with red eyes, threw herself into the prince's arms. May the gods have mercy and bless Maester Luwin's soul in heaven. Joffrey comforted her, they will. Maester Luwin didn't have to die. It was a pity that he woke up at the wrong time. Fortunately, the aftermath was handled fairly cleanly. The Starks only knew that someone had killed the old maester, and the investigation over the past few days had yielded nothing. A bloody storm about to be unleashed by a secret letter was nipped in the bud. But only temporarily. Joffrey couldn't help but have a headache. Lysa Tully, what a crazy woman, actually daring to trust Littlefinger. Lysa's identity was too clever, both Catelyn's sister and the wife of Prime Minister Jon Arryn. As long as she said that the Lannisters murdered the Prime Minister, it would be good if the Starks became suspicious. For Joffrey, while he couldn't let the lion and the wolf get too close, he couldn't let them fight each other even more. Fortunately, Lysa still had concerns in her heart. As long as she understood that the power of the throne was enough to destroy her and her weak son, she would shut up. The burial ceremony in the chapel ended. Joffrey thoughtfully took Sansa to the Godswood to soothe her mood. The Godswood in the castle. Old and thick oak trees often blocked the road, blue-grey sentinel trees grew hard needles, and the ironwood did not live up to its name, being black throughout and with hard wood. This god's wood was consistent with the keynote of the north. Cold, unsmiling, and tenacious. They walked to the black water pool in the center of the forest. The branches and leaves of an ancient weirwood tree intertwined and spread, covering the entire lake like a dome. Joffrey moved closer. For thousands of years, the fallen leaves and branches of the weirwood tree had created soft soil. Every step you took, you could feel the ground reluctantly parting with the solace of the living. The primeval forest had an unspeakable temperament, as if the old gods were staring at people with thousands of invisible eyes. Joffrey stared at the deep and melancholy human face on the weirwood tree. The pale bark made its deep-set eyes even more scarlet. Although it was just dried sap, it always made people think of blood. Was the three-eyed raven watching this side at this time? Joffrey knew the raven's abilities. The weirwood tree was the raven's most powerful eye. The ancient weirwood tree held many memories, and the raven used it to observe the world. Joffrey stretched out his palm and pressed it on that human face, and the flashback rune immediately presented him with countless scenes. He also saw the past that the raven saw. Sansa's mood was much better. Father said we will set off south the day after tomorrow. Joffrey turned around and hugged Sansa. Yes, thanks to Lord Eddard for not separating the two of us. Sansa pushed him away shyly and angrily. Where are we not separated? You're not going with us, and we might not see each other for months. Don't be angry, I have serious business to attend to. He held up Sansa's face. I have a surprise for you the day after tomorrow, guess what it is? What surprise? Joffrey smiled mysteriously. You'll know when the time comes. Sansa kicked him in anger. Winterfell became busy. Duke Stark, who was about to go south to take over as Hand of the King, was about to take away almost half of his manpower. The second son Bran, the eldest daughter Sansa, and the second daughter Arya would all embark on the journey with their father and live in the Red Keep of King's Landing. Winterfell's steward Vayen Poole, Sansa's best friend Jane Poole, captain of the guard Jory Castle, master of the horse Hullen, and Septa Mordain, among other retainers, would all accompany them. At this time, the sky had just dawned. The east gate of Winterfell was full of people saying goodbye and seeing them off. Bran excitedly rode a tall steed, crookedly driving from the city to the gate. He saw the Crown Prince by the roadside. Your Highness! Bran bent down. The dream that night was not the end. The Crown Prince had also given him a mysterious power to resist the monster's attack. Bran only felt deeply grateful for this. Joffrey waved his hand. Goodbye to King's Landing, be careful along the way. Bran nodded as seriously as possible, and then galloped towards the King's Road outside the door. This feeling was great. Arya also rushed over at this time. Her target was Jon beside Joffrey. Jon, I'll miss you. Jon rubbed his little sister's hair. I miss you too. Don't worry, we'll see each other again. Joffrey took out a steel piece and handed it to Arya. Here's something for you. This is a treasure. With it, you and Jon can chat across the entire north. Arya hesitated and took it. Jon smiled and pulled out his necklace. Hanging on the necklace was an identical steel piece. He said to the steel piece, Arya, this is real. Arya heard Jon's voice and the voice on the steel piece at the same time. Wow! She glanced at Joffrey, and the inexplicable resistance in her heart instantly dissipated for the most part. Thank you. Joffrey returned a smile. Goodbye. Good nephew, look who's here. Tyrion really hated his short legs. Cersei hugged Joffrey reluctantly. Little Joff, what are you thinking? The wall is so cold. Did Tyrion instigate you to go? See, it's my fault again. Tyrion complained softly to Jaime next to him. Joffrey patted his mother's back. It has nothing to do with Uncle. I wanted to see the wall myself and express the royal family's concern to the Night's Watch. Mother, please rest assured, nothing will happen. He winked at Tommen and Myrcella behind Cersei. After spending these days together, his younger brother and sister had a much better impression of him. He finally got 2 smiles. Cersei stepped onto the wheelhouse worriedly. Finally. Sansa, in a silver white leather robe, walked gracefully. Where's the surprise? Sansa was full of expectation. Joffrey took out a wooden plate, covered with a bright red cloth over his farewell gift. Uncover it and take a look. Sansa pinched a corner of the red cloth and slowly lifted it up. So beautiful. Everyone's eyes were attracted to it. Crystal clear like frost and snow, ice blue like the deep sea, clusters of roses gathered together to form a gorgeous and bright queen's crown. Joffrey placed the rose crown on Sansa's head. These are winter roses grown in the glass gardens, they were born to belong to you. That spring, Rhaegar disregarded everything and gave this laurel crown to Lyanna, the queen of love and beauty in his heart. My love at this time is 10,000 times more ardent than his. That was a wrong spring. Joffrey held the girl's hand tightly, but we will definitely have the most perfect ending. Sansa blushed. Chapter 40, Slave Traders and Traitors. The sunlight gradually dimmed. Aeron stood by the sea, quietly gazing at the palace. This palace by the bay had 9 towers, ornate and elegant, with pale ivy climbing all over the towers and walls. It was a gift from the magisters of Pentos to Kuldrogo. As everyone knew, the Dothraki lived a nomadic life, their tribes were called Kalassars, and the leader of a Kalassar was known as Akil. And Kuldrogo ruled the largest Kalassar, with more than 40,000 warriors under his command. Aeron, however, was about to become his enemy. At the banquet more than 10 days ago, Kuldrogo had taken a liking to Princess Daenerys Targaryen, and the two had become engaged. Aeron didn't have much time left. Fortunately, Kuldrogo had returned to his Kalassar on the grasslands outside the city, leaving the palace for the princess and her retinue to reside in temporarily. Aeron had finally managed to meet with Jorah Mormont. A deep voice sounded from behind him, "What do you want with me?" Aeron turned around. The middle-aged, burly man before him was slightly balding, with dark skin, and a black bear standing on its hind legs embroidered on his dark green coat. It was the exiled former lord of Bear Island, Jorah Mormont. "Lord Mormont, can't you see the stupidity and madness of Viserys? Why would you willingly serve him?" Jorah narrowed his eyes. "Be careful, squire, watch your tongue." Aeron knew he had to press forward. Following a mad beggar king, or mingling with barbaric nomadic tribes? Is this the kind of life you want for yourself? The waves crashed against the rocky shore, providing a slight cover for this clandestine conversation. Or, Aeron lowered his voice, "Do you still yearn to return to your homeland, and your current actions are only because you received a promise from someone across the narrow sea?" Jorah threateningly placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. "What exactly do you mean by that?" "The spider is whispering. The promise you received comes from the spider." Aeron could only hope that the Crown Prince's intelligence was accurate. "The spider will soon be consumed by fury, his promise is worthless. What you need is forgiveness from the Iron Throne. Lord Mormont, do you want to return to Westeros or not?" Jorah's mind was in turmoil, but he truly longed to return to the past. "Not a day goes by that I don't miss Bear Island." "You want my answer?" "I am certain." "Aeron, who are you?" Jorah considered many possibilities, but then he heard Aeron say, "His Royal Highness sent me to do something. How could this be possible?" An idea from a teenager? However, Viserys had indeed boasted about Aeron's past identity, the squire forgotten by Prince Joffrey. So it was all a disguise. Jorah felt a strong curiosity towards the unseen Prince Joffrey. Aeron threw out his bargaining chip. "His Highness specifically mentioned you to me. As long as you are willing to assist me in completing my mission, those charges are insignificant. Lord Mormont can restore all his honor and status." Jorah's father's face appeared before his eyes, and he gave a bitter smile. "No, my honor can never be restored, and the North will not treat me as before. It would be good enough to clear some of the stigma from the Mormont family." Aeron waited quietly. After a long while, Jorah spoke, "What does His Royal Highness want to do?" Aeron did not say it directly. "Allow me to remind Lord Mormont that my loyalty to His Highness has never changed. If my mission fails, Lord Mormont's true identity may not be able to remain hidden." Jorah remained silent. Aeron continued to state his mission. Jorah turned to leave. "How is that even possible? The wedding of the princess and Kuldrogo will be held in a week. He has more than 40,000 warriors, the most powerful Kalassar. What can we two do?" Aeron stood in front of Jorah. "Don't you think it's a bit late to back out now? If you want to leave, draw your sword and kill me first." Aeron, of course, understood the difficulty, but he had no way back. Is the brave knight who once won countless justing championships so cowardly now? Not even as good as a little squire like me. Jorah sneered, "You think you can goad me into throwing my life away with such tricks?" Aeron shook his head and said, "Once your identity as a spider's spy is exposed in Pentos, it probably won't be safer than this, will it?" Jorah was silent. Aeron quickly continued to persuade, "Besides, it's not just the two of us. I've been in Pentos for 4 months now, and naturally, I'll have friends who are willing to help. Yora didn't believe such words. They were nothing more than some mercenaries and assassins, desperados who couldn't see the light of day. Aaron saw Yora's attitude. Lord Mormont might as well listen to my plan before speaking. How can it be said that we're throwing our lives away? To ensure the completion of the mission, I certainly hope that we can both safely cross the narrow sea. Yora was very much looking forward to what brilliant plan this fellow could come up with. But after listening, Aaron, if you don't call this throwing your life away, then perhaps only slitting your own throat on the spot would count. To be honest, Yora now admired the squire's loyalty and courage somewhat. He really didn't take his own life seriously. Lord Mormont, I still remember who I am. Compared to languishing under the beggar king for the rest of my life, I would rather die in a glorious mission. Aaron's face was full of determination. The various hardships of the past few months had made his belief even purer. Storms, ridicule, hunger, slaughter, insults, suspicion, beatings. The only thing that could comfort him was the mission he bore. Abandon the mission and go into exile on the continent of Essos? No. He only wanted to return to the Red Keep, back to the familiar people, back to his own life. He had to get the beggar king and Daenerys. The power of the Magisters of Pentos and the Khalasar is too great. It is certainly impossible for us to confront them head-on with just a few people. This is our only chance. Aaron seemed to have already seen the beautiful ending after the victory. Think about it, what a shocking scene it would be, the blood flowing like rivers in Pentos, and we will escort the remnants of the dragon back to King's Landing. His Highness will definitely like it. Not only the Mormont family, but Lord Mormont's infamy will also be completely cleared, even more glorious and radiant than before. Yora was rationally a bit pessimistic. Hopefully, we can all live to see that day. The two returned to the palace one after another. Viserys was already drunk and playing with the maids in bed, while Daenerys sat alone in the courtyard, admiring the moon. Princess Daenerys, Aaron respectfully walked up behind her. Daenerys was a little homesick. The kind Sir Willem Darry, the house with the red-painted door, the lemon trees outside the window, her brother who told her stories about her father, mother, and the Seven Kingdoms. That was her lost childhood. She could never go back, only the Dothraki Sea of Grass and the Seven Kingdoms that Viserys was obsessed with. She would rather go to that homeland that only existed in words and imagination. That place where the green hills crisscrossed, the flowers bloomed on the plains, and the deep rivers surged. Where is Sir Yora? Please ask him to come and tell some stories about home. Aaron bowed and said, Sir Yora is probably already asleep. If the princess wants to learn about your kingdom, Aaron also knows some stories about King's Landing and the Westerlands. I believe you will like them. Princess Daenerys glanced at him and reluctantly nodded. Chapter 41, The Fallen Night's Watch. 8,000 years after the long night disaster that swept the world subsided, the wall rose in the far north of the Seven Kingdoms. It was built of ice and giant stones, hundreds of kilometers long and hundreds of meters high, and it is said that ancient spells and magic were woven into it. From that time on, the Night's Watch has kept watch. The wall became the greatest barrier for the Seven Kingdoms against the wildlings and others beyond the wall. As everyone knows, the road from Winterfell to the wall is not easy. It is more than 1,000 kilometers north of Winterfell, and the further north you go, the more severe and desolate the land becomes, and the colder wind becomes more greedy and thirsty for the heat of the living. Joffrey's party of 9 had been traveling north along the King's Road for 12 days. At first, there were only 6 people, Joffrey, Tyrion, 2 attendants, Jon and Benyon Stark, the first ranger of the Night's Watch. Later, Yoren brought 2 rapists to join the party. Yoren was responsible for recruiting brothers for the Night's Watch in the Seven Kingdoms. Now the Night's Watch has declined to the extreme, and no good families take the initiative to join. He had to collect criminals from all over the Seven Kingdoms who were willing to join the Night's Watch in place of punishment to be brothers. These 2 rapists came from the Fingers Peninsula in the Vale. Not only were they ragged and covered in dirt, but their every move was both stupid and cruel. But these 2 were just ordinary guys who joined the Night's Watch from Yoren's hands. Jon was even more grateful after seeing them. It turned out that the Night's Watch was really so unbearable. Fortunately, he accepted His Highness's invitation, otherwise what hope would there be in life? Although he hadn't seen the shadow of the wall yet, Jon had already deeply felt its enthusiasm. King's Landing is so much better. Jon couldn't help but look at the Crown Prince leisurely watching the scenery on the giant lion, and felt another burst of envy. Joffrey didn't suffer along the way. He had rain as his mount, magic to keep him warm and hunt, people to serve him, snow mountains and forests to admire, and he could chat with Tyrion to pass the time. It's just that a group of big men are a bit of an eyesore. He glanced at the rapists, and completely gave up hope for the discipline and quality of the Night's Watch. It's no wonder that for thousands of years no others or other monsters have invaded the north, so that people now think that it is just an ancient legend. Without the others, the only threat beyond the wall is the backward wildlings. And the huge wall is enough to prevent the wildlings from crossing the border on a large scale, and the scattered smugglers can't even get out of the north. It is conceivable that the Seven Kingdoms are naturally not as supportive of the Night's Watch as they were thousands of years ago. An army without enough fresh blood and supplies will only gradually corrupt and even perish over time. But Joffrey understood that it was not a myth or legend, the others and the long night would come again, and the Night's Watch would soon usher in its true mission. He knew he had to take it seriously. When he ascends the throne and the Seven Kingdoms are stable and developed again, the Night's Watch will be reborn in his hands, and the criminals will have another place to go. Benjen tugged on the reins, and the plough horse under him reluctantly approached the terrifying giant lion. In 2 weeks, we will arrive at Castle Black. It's not too late for His Highness to regret it now. What the brothers of the Night's Watch want is not empty condolences. Bread, spirits, steel, manpower, what can you give? Perhaps because of his disgust for the Lannisters, Benjen had always been cold to Joffrey. Joffrey met Benjen's scrutinizing gaze, the others have long disappeared, and the wildlings are not to be feared. The Night's Watch should be grateful for the kingdom's support, rather than complaining that it is not good enough. Besides, I am still the crown prince of the Seven Kingdoms, is my personal visit not worth mentioning? Benjen snorted and was about to say something more. Joffrey raised his hand to signal vigilance. Interesting, a group of rats has come to the forest. Everyone had already witnessed the crown prince's keen perception, and immediately drew out their swords and looked towards the deep forest on the left side of the road, following the crown prince's gaze. Amidst the slight rustling sounds, more shadows gradually appeared between the dense oak and evergreen trees. Joffrey looked to the other side again, there are also some here. Benjen pointed the tip of his sword to the right. After dozens of silent breaths, 30 or 40 disheveled guys surrounded them. Most of these guys were men, and their weapons were messy and backward, short knives, spears, bronze axes, notched long swords, and crude wooden bows, standard wildling attire. Awoo! A snow bear, no smaller than Rain, carried a skinny man with rolling eyes in front of the road, and its huge eyes flashed with an abnormal gleam. A warg. The 2 rapists showed fear, and the short knives in the hands of the other 2 attendants also trembled. Joffrey became a little serious. Things didn't seem that simple. It was normal for wildlings to appear, but how could a warg and a snow bear cross the wall? Tyrion tried to communicate, "Free folk, with such power, why can't you live in peace? Why do you have to do such petty things as robbery? It's not good to get hurt." A bald man laughed. "Half man, you dwarf dare to say such things? With just you few, one breath is enough to solve you all, who will get hurt?" Tyrion secretly remembered this face. Joffrey noticed the bald man's dirty and mottled clothes. Although they were worn and faded, he could still tell that it used to be a black cloak. Black. A deserter from the Night's Watch. Joffrey looked at them one by one. At least 7 or 8 of them were wearing the black clothes of the Night's Watch. Most of the others' clothes, shoes, and hats were tattered and irregular leather. A few of the clothes were obviously characteristic of the Seven Kingdoms, obviously stolen from others. Another bearded man said, "We only want money and wealth. Put down your weapons and we will spare your lives." No one believed such words. Joffrey calculated slightly. 5 archers, 32 guys with weapons, a snow bear and its controller. The paper strength on his side was obviously not as good as the opponent's. He couldn't get through safely by deterrence alone. Then there was only fighting. Joffrey shouted loudly, "Don't move, I am the heir of Winterfell. As long as you spare our lives, any amount of gold and silver is negotiable." The wildlings were all attracted for a while. Joffrey immediately drew out 7 throwing knives and shot the archers first. With a few swooshing sounds, the 5 archers almost simultaneously released the wooden bows in their hands, and fell heavily to the ground with the throwing knives on their heads, falling into eternal sleep. The wildlings immediately exploded, "Kill them!" The battle began. Jon, Benjen, charged to the right. Rain carried Joffrey and Tyrion into the forest on the right, tearing apart 6 or 7 wildlings along the way. Under the giant lion's mouth, a gap appeared in the encirclement. Jon, Ghost, Benyon, and Yoren immediately followed. The other few unlucky guys who reacted slowly were almost instantly overwhelmed by the wildlings, and blood and flesh splattered. A dozen wildlings chased into the jungle for dozens of steps, but still couldn't see anyone. It seemed to be over. Many spoils were left on the road: horses, trucks, food, etc. The wildlings who stopped on the road excitedly scrambled to grab them, and those who went to chase in the jungle also hurried back to divide the spoils. Awoo! The snow bear crushed a human head. The warg opened its mouth. Chase, find that lion! The wildlings suppressed their anger and fear and re-entered the jungle. Chapter 42, The Snow Bear's Hunt. The tall, lush trees of the Wolf's Wood were perfect for a game of hide-and-seek. The free folk dared not be careless, maintaining their formation throughout the chase, the 25 warriors moving in concert with the snow bear. The free folk had already paid a price in blood. Though only 5 had knelt, the dire wolf and the other giant beast were not to be underestimated, and no one wanted to face such monsters alone. If not for the skin changer's compulsion, they would never have approached those who had knelt. If not for the skin changer's orders, they might already be fleeing south to the warm, prosperous lands in Winterfell, built of giant stones. The southerners said Winterfell belonged to the north, but no, compared to beyond the wall, this was the south. But there were no ifs. The free folk had no choice but to tread into this forest filled with deadly intent. The snow bear tracked the scent of its enemies, the free folk following cautiously behind, stepping on fallen leaves. The forest was eerily silent. No birds sang, no insects chirped, no wild animals stirred, only the sounds they themselves made. The free folk caught the scent of panic and danger. Who, truly, was the prey? Some recalled their comrades who had just died beneath the claws of the unknown giant beast, the reddish-yellow jelly amidst the shattered bones, the desperate struggle of those cleaved in two at the waist, the stench of blood and sour fluids, the horrifying eyes of the dead. Those who picked up bows and arrows remembered their predecessors, felled by throwing knives lodged in their brains. That noble young lord was too ruthless. The archers felt some regret. This was merely a hastily assembled band, not a united tribe. The archers seemed to be in particular danger, likely to be the first to die. All the free folk wondered, why was the skin changer so intent on hunting down these kneelers? Joffrey was curious as well. The skin changer's appearance was already illogical, and now this reckless pursuit must conceal some conspiracy. Regardless of the truth, the enemy must be defeated first. Tethering his easily spooked horse, Joffrey placed a shattered piece of steel in his palm. The hunt began. Tyrion waved his dagger in the air incessantly. "Nephew, hand that bald man over to me to deal with, you understand? A Lannister always pays his debts." Joffrey rolled his eyes at him. If he weren't afraid something might happen to Tyrion and the others, he wouldn't have strategically retreated, he would have settled the score on the spot. "From now on, you'll all follow my orders." "No problem, Lord Commander Mormont." Jeor silently drew his short sword. Joffrey was satisfied. "Good. As long as we cooperate closely, those wildlings will all perish in this forest, and we won't shed a drop of blood." He sensed the information transmitted by the shattered piece of steel. The range of his mental power was not yet great enough, but with the other fragments of steel scattered throughout the forest as a medium, he could remotely scout the wildlings' movements in real time. After a moment, Joffrey finalized his plan. "We'll ambush them here." He transmitted the terrain and scenery of the ambush location to the other 4 through information runes. "Jon, you and Ghost will move with me. Jeor and Yoren are responsible for capturing prisoners and protecting Tyrion." Jon was fine, but Jeor and Yoren's eyes almost popped out of their heads. Yoren asked in a trembling voice, his face filled with shock, "What is this power?" "The gods have manifested." Joffrey doubted they had even remembered their mission. "Perhaps it is not the gods, but it must be the grace of some great, supreme being. In any case, I have received a boon, which shows that the 7 kingdoms are deeply favored by fate." He patted Jeor on the shoulder. "I know. The others do exist, and that is why I decided to come to the wall. The disaster of the others is not far off, but the 7 kingdoms are not yet prepared, but it doesn't matter, I will unite the 7 kingdoms, and humanity will ultimately triumph." Jeor's impression of the Crown Prince was completely overturned. "Move out immediately," Joffrey said as he walked, "leave some alive. I believe you have enough experience." Don't let a single wildling escape. Gior and Yoren barely calmed down. Understood, Your Highness. The hunters took their positions. Joffrey and Jon hid in the dense canopy. Ghost and Rain lay prone behind the ambush point, ready to join the battle at any time. Gior, Yoren, and Tyrion hid further back, waiting to mop up after the frontal battle ended. The wind rustled through the trees. The wildlings immediately watched their surroundings warily. The skin changer standing on the ground kept his eyes open, and the snow bear, unusually free from control, roared a few times in agitation. There were too many scents, too mixed, and it could not pinpoint the enemy's exact location. The wildlings did not detect anything unusual. But they had already stepped into Joffrey's mental domain. From this moment on, every move of every wildling would be impossible to escape Joffrey's sight. The prey was caught in the net. Joffrey quietly drew 5 throwing knives. It was best to keep the skin changer alive. Even if he killed him, he could occupy the snow bear's body in soul form, which would not be very useful. Then the archers were still the highest priority target. The wildlings gradually moved closer. 60 meters, 50 meters, 40 meters, 30 meters. Joffrey didn't wait any longer. Several small shadows flashed over the wildlings' heads. The wildlings panicked and dodged. The archers did not move, simply silently falling into the pile of leaves with the bows and arrows in their hands. The skin changer's body instantly collapsed to the ground, his eyes turning white as he entered the snow bear's consciousness. Then, the snow bear's violent eyes fixed on Joffrey's hiding place. Rain had already rushed over, tearing the hairless monkeys, blocking the way to shreds in a few steps. The snow bear turned to face the giant lion and stood upright, its 2 massive paws raised high, the stinking, gaping maw opening into an exaggerated arc, like 2 rows of waiting serrated guillotines. In less than a breath's time, the 2 giant beasts collided with a thud. Lion claws and bear paws danced into a blurry afterimage, 2 bloody mouths vying to tear flesh. Lion roars and bear howls louder and fiercer with each passing moment, sending chills down the spine. Ghost also rushed over, drilling holes in a wildling's belly, his pure white fur stained with patches of blood. Jon, come and see some blood. Joffrey jumped down from the canopy and severed the head of a terrified wildling next to him with a sword, the gushing blood splattering directly on him. A true battle of life and death. Jon took a deep breath and joined the battle. The free folk, not yet in despair, exchanged glances and charged toward the noble young lord, howling wildly. Capturing this guy meant survival. 8 warriors against 1 southerner, they could not imagine failure. But that noble's sword was so powerful that no sword, axe, or blade could withstand a single strike. 2 warriors were directly cleaved in 2. That noble was simply not human. How could a human be stabbed without a drop of blood flowing? More terrifying than a White Walker. 3 red lights flashed, and 7 or 8 more pieces of human flesh and bone were added to the ground. No, he was not human. The wildlings collapsed. The snow bear was covered in bloody marks and burns, but the unknown giant beast's fur remained shiny and smooth, just like this noble young lord. Several wildlings threw down their weapons and groveled on the ground, while others began to flee in a frenzy. Gior and Yoren had work to do. Joffrey lowered the tip of dragon flame and looked toward the snow bear. Rain had already been infused with the mirrored images of the fortification, restoration, and growth runes. What threat could a mere snow bear pose? As expected, the snow bear was about to completely lose its ability to resist. Joffrey was about to tell Rain to hold back. Awoo! Awoo! The snow bear roared to the sky a few times, its body seemed to stiffen for a moment, and suddenly, regardless of its injuries, it rushed in front of the skin changer. With a few cracks, the skin changer's body shattered. The snow bear then collapsed weakly to the ground, panting, the strange gleam in its eyes also disappearing. Joffrey narrowed his eyes and looked deeply into the clear sky. There were no ravens. Chapter 43. Black soil, white wood, that was everything in the cave. Here, far beyond the wall, beneath the nameless, frozen hills lay countless interconnected caves, extending deep into the earth, and no one had ever fully explored all of these dark passages. The dead are becoming more and more numerous. A sweet, high-pitched voice sounded as if singing a sorrowful song. She resembled a little girl, with large eyes that blended gold and emerald, and colorful, tangled hair interwoven with branches and flowers. She wore a cloak made of leaves, and her dark brown skin was dappled like a doe. An elf. She was a child of the forest. But in their original tongue, they called themselves those who sing of the earth. The three-eyed raven in the weirwood throne croaked in a hoarse whisper, "The minions of the cold god have revived, but we still have hope. The dead they control cannot cross the magic at the cave entrance. A White Walker could turn even thousands upon thousands of the dead into whites under its command." The child of the forest looked worriedly at the old man, who was so ancient he was practically decaying. Most of his flesh had merged with the weirwood, turning into pale bark and wood. Apart from a single crimson eye and long, pale hair that reached his waist, the old man was now just a talking human face on a weirwood tree. This was the last green seer. Originally, the green seer was a tradition of the children of the forest, but now they were on the verge of extinction and had to rely on wise men from among humans. Brynden Rivers. This old man had once given them hope, but now it seemed that the end of their race was still unavoidable. "Green seer, perhaps we will all return to the earth with you." She knew. The old man had long exceeded the lifespan of a mortal. It was only through unwavering faith that he had lingered in the world for so many years, but he had finally reached his limit. Perhaps in a few months, or perhaps a year or two, the old man would meet his final end. Bloodraven Brynden had not given up. "No, I have already found a new green seer for you. He will do much better than I, and he will help the world stop the cold god's conspiracy." She knew this heir. Brandon Stark, gifted with the talent of a green seer, had received the old man's attention and care since birth. Unfortunately, hasn't that child already gone further south, to the plains that were once a thriving forest? Bloodraven felt both hatred and regret at this. Things shouldn't be like this. I watched him for so many years, how could it end like this? He was unwilling. He was Brynden Rivers, the famous Lord Bloodraven, of noble dragon blood. His past deeds had now become legendary tales. People said he had 1,001 eyes and was an evil sorcerer. So what? The slanders and fears of the ignorant only proved that his existence could not be underestimated. Even after being exiled to the Wall and losing everything he once had, he became the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He gradually grew old. The gods blessed him when he met the children of the forest beyond the Wall in his 70s. Fate favored him. He became the green seer of the haunted forest, the three-eyed raven, and lived until now. Although he could not walk on the earth again, he could fly. He had 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000 eyes. He could see the whole world. He didn't want to die yet. Bran was the best opportunity. He could start over from him, use the power of the Seven Kingdoms to resist the White Walkers, and reclaim the dragon's throne. The trajectory of fate has been disrupted by that person who should not exist. As long as we correct it, that child will understand the mission he bears. She looked at the old man with clear and ancient eyes. "How do we correct it?" He said, "That person has powers that do not belong to the human world, fire, steel, eyes. Perhaps he is the tribulation we must face." Brynden remembered the scene he had seen. "You are the only one in the tribe who understands the common tongue. I need you to personally make a trip, take a few strong tribesmen, and bring that person back." After hesitating for a moment, Brynden decided to reveal some of his trump cards. "Take my raven with you. It will find the human skin changers in the forest. These people can help you." She saw the expectation in the old man's eyes. For many years, they had only hidden from human traces. Now, they had to actively attack humans? The person who should not exist. She imagined what he looked like. She was a little scared, but she knew, she should listen to the Green Seer's instructions. The Green Seer could see everything. "I understand, Green Seer. Hopefully, this trip would be smooth." She turned and walked out of the cave step by step. Behind her came another whisper, "Take this sword. Those humans will probably need it." She turned her head and saw a slender, black longsword. She had traveled the human world for 200 years. She knew its name, Dark Sister. The black raven flew out of the cave. The children of the forest followed closely behind their companion. Many dead were buried in the heavy snow outside the cave. The aura of life quickly awakened them, and the dead opened their eyes. A large group of whites rose from the ice and snow, surging towards the children of the forest. "Is the cold god watching?" she thought. Her own companion was a fox, and the other 6 tribesmen were riding brave beasts. The shadowcat's claws could tear a dead man to shreds in a few strokes, and the wild boar ploughed a path with its powerful body. The raven in the sky slowly circled, unaffected. They quickly broke out of the encirclement. She breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed they were just some mindless dead. The whites fully controlled by a White Walker were much smarter. Coupled with the advantage in numbers, it would at least be much more troublesome. The raven flew towards the southwest. The tribesmen looked at her, their eyes filled with both eager excitement and worry about the unknown dangers. She sang to the tribesmen in their original tongue, "The earth blesses us, the forest blesses us, the last green seer has an heir, correcting the trajectory of fate, the tribe will surely prosper as before." Out of trust in the green seer, the children of the forest left their last home. Ahem, let me say something. Since that lord has ordered it, everyone must obey and not act without authorization. A tall human riding a mammoth shouted loudly. The free folk burst into an uproar, each vying to express their opinions, and no one would listen to anyone else. The children of the forest looked at this scene in confusion. She wasn't too surprised. Compared to the tribesmen in her homeland, years of traveling had made her understand many of the strange reactions of humans. The humans outside the wall were not as united as those inside the wall, but they would not suddenly erupt into particularly large conflicts. She knew that time would calm these humans down. The helpers the Raven had found were all here, and the team was about to head to the wall. She now had much more confidence. More than 500 strong humans, more than 30 skin changers. Wild boars, snow bears, shadow cats, mammoths, dire wolves, grey wolves, foxes, eagles, ravens, wild dogs. No matter how terrible that person who should not exist was, he wouldn't be able to resist, right? She smiled pleasantly. Chapter 44. Tyrion smiled without restraint. 9 captives knelt on the ground. 7 men and 2 women, all of whom had taken up arms and killed. Fortunately, that bald man didn't die. Tyrion happily pondered how to deal with this discriminatory bastard. Yoren walked over, carrying a string of dangling heads. "Thanks to your highness, the wild dogs are finished, and the walls of the Great Wall can have dozens more dog heads as decorations." Joffrey said, "There's no need to be so harsh. After all, there are 2 deserters from the Night's Watch among them. How can you say they are wild dogs, right?" He looked at the 2 deserters. The limp deserters didn't seem to have any intention of denying it. Benyon snorted coldly, "Worse than dogs. They probably haven't forgotten my face yet. Your Highness, let me personally execute these 2 traitors." Tyrion interjected, "Leave the bald man to me." Joffrey didn't even agree, "Tell me what you know. Whoever provides more valuable information will live." A glimmer of hope for survival ignited in the eyes of the 2 deserters. They already knew Joffrey's true identity. If they could get the Crown Prince's pardon, would the Night's Watch dare to disobey? The 2 men's eyes met. The bald giant rushed to Joffrey first, "Your Highness, I am indeed a member of the Night's Watch. Once, when I was patrolling outside the Great Wall, I encountered others, and then, becoming a wildling was really a last resort." The other skinny man with a grey stubble was only 1 step slower, stiff. "How dare you deceive His Highness? I, Warren, did do something wrong, but at least I dare to admit it." Joffrey looked at them expressionlessly as they tried their best to create a persona. "Stop talking nonsense. I want information. What kind of people you are and what you've done doesn't matter. Who is that skin changer? How did you gather together? Why are you chasing us? What happened outside the Great Wall? Have you seen any other special guys?" Warren immediately said respectfully, "Your Highness is wise. That skin changer is called Varmer, and the wildlings also call him Sixskins. He originally had 3 wolves, a snow bear, and a shadow lynx, but he only brought the snow bear when he crossed the Great Wall. Mance Rayder seemed to have recruited Varmer, trying to resist the others or the Great Wall, but not many people have confidence." Stiff interrupted. "Many wildlings fled south because they were afraid of the others, mostly in groups of a few or a dozen, but Varmer forced several groups to serve him with the help of the snow bear. That's how we were forced to join. As for why he attacked your highness, I swear, he didn't say a word. Varmer was very quiet along the way. Except for eating, his soul was almost always in the snow bear's body." "Oh, right," Warren's eyes lit up. "When Varmer was in the snow bear's body, his body could still speak. I've never heard of such a thing before." Hearing this, Joffrey was almost certain of the mastermind behind the scenes. If the mental power is strong enough, one can control several bodies at the same time, but this skin changer is obviously not qualified. Who controlled him, or even controlled him and the snow bear's body at the same time? Joffrey could only think of the three-eyed raven. Good fellow, you have so much hostility towards me, you really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Benyon took a step forward. Speak. How did the snow bear cross the Great Wall? It can't climb the Great Wall or cross the sea on a wildling's broken ship. The two deserters were silent. They were not accomplices who crossed the border with Varamir. Lord, I know. The tall wildling woman suddenly spoke, raising her head and giving Joffrey and Benyon a smile. Benyon frowned. Speak directly, spear wife. Women among the wildlings who take up arms to fight are called spear wives. As long as they are wildlings who take up arms, they are all enemies. Benyon would never have even a trace of mercy. Lord, I have a name, Osha. Also, let me advise you, His Highness hasn't spoken yet. She knew who was in charge. Joffrey knew her. In the original book, she was captured by Robb and later became Bran and Rickon's early guard. Tell me, Osha. I'm also very curious. As you wish. Osha was full of desire to survive. I saw with my own eyes that Varamir's snow bear came in from a certain abandoned secret passage in the Great Wall. Benyon became anxious as soon as he heard this. That's impossible. Would you dare to point out that secret passage? Osha smiled. Lord, I am very willing, as long as His Highness allows me to walk to the Great Wall alive. Osha will definitely find it for you. Joffrey's eyes swept over the other wildlings. Does anyone else want to say anything? Now is the last chance. The wildlings panicked. Escaping from their homes beyond the wall and kneeling here quietly as prisoners, they were no longer independent and untamed free folk. They kowtowed and begged for mercy. Lord, Your Highness, spare my life. I can do anything for you. I am most familiar with the outside of the Great Wall, Lord Benyon. I am willing to lead the way for the Night's Watch and provide all assistance. I have seen Mance Rayder, the Night's Watch needs me. Your Highness, have mercy, I am willing to swear allegiance to you. Joffrey shook his head regretfully. It was estimated that no more valuable information could be dug out. Nevertheless, he collected more than 30 items of weapons and clothing from the wildlings before and after. Although the retracing rune cannot directly probe the past of people and animals, many scenes can be seen through these personal items, and perhaps something can be discovered. And that snow bear. Although he saved the snow bear, it couldn't speak itself. He could only give the snow bear an information rune mirror and expect this guy to learn how to use it. Joffrey tried to communicate with the snow bear through the information rune, but all that came back were emotions of fear and resistance. Uncle, this big dumb bear is for you. Talk to it more, and I look forward to your harvest. Tyrion immediately understood. Good nephew, don't worry, with my guidance, I guarantee it will even remember how many mouthfuls of milk it drank when it was a child. Tyrion ran excitedly towards the snow bear. He finally had his own mount. Joffrey gave Benyon and Yoren a look. Get up, Osha, you can help us now. The 6 wildlings looked in horror as they were roughly tied up by the Night's Watch and knelt in a row. The 2 deserters waited nervously for the final judgment. Joffrey recalled the clues he had noticed in the past few months. It was time to verify this guess. Stiff, Warren, I regret that this is the last time I call your names. You shouldn't have betrayed the Night's Watch, and you shouldn't have lied to me. The 2 deserters collapsed instantly, saying something vaguely in their mouths. Did they lie? Joffrey knew the answer. Benyon finally got his wish and dragged the 2 traitors into the wildling ranks, one in each hand. Be glad that you can have such a clean death, without any pain, much better than your companions. Joffrey drew out dragon flame, and the sword body ignited with a scorching red light. These 3 wildlings belong to me, you each take one, and when I count to 1, everyone will do it together. Tyrion quickly stood behind the bald man. Joffrey raised dragon flame high and announced in a loud voice, in the name of Robert I of the House Baratheon, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm, I, Joffrey of the House Baratheon, heir to the Iron Throne and Prince of Dragonstone, hereby sentence you to death. 3, 2, 1. Dragonflame and the other 5 swords were swung down together. Hot blood spurted out of the headless necks for several meters, and the mist steamed up. 8 heads rolled a few times along the blood stains, and their desperate eyes almost froze at the same time. The consciousness of 8 humans fell into eternal silence. An invisible induction appeared, and then disappeared in an instant. The light of dragon flame seemed to be brighter. The invisible induction is source energy. Joffrey took out the ruby hanging around his neck. After careful sensing, the source energy in the gem did have an abnormal increase. He got the answer. Source energy is difficult to exist in the material world, but it can be stored by mediums such as gems, and can be absorbed by runes and converted into magic energy. More importantly, it can also be brought into this world by a person's soul or thoughts, even if only for a moment. There is a way to profit from the magic net. Chapter 45. The Wedding of Kuldrogo. In accordance with Dothraki tradition, the wedding of Kuldrogo and Princess Daenerys was held on an open space in the grasslands outside Pentos. Daenerys was filled with fear. The Dothraki actually believed that all important events in life should be witnessed by the heavens, including weddings and honeymoons. How could it be like this? She was afraid from the bottom of her heart. Afraid of this wedding that hadn't asked for her opinion from beginning to end. Afraid of the man sitting next to her, speaking the rough language of the nomadic people that she couldn't understand, and he hadn't even looked at her much. Afraid of everything she would be forced to endure in some open space after the sun went down. Confusion, fear, and the unknown enveloped her. In the end, she was just a 13-year-old girl. This was not the wedding scene she had imagined. More than 40,000 strangely behaving and barbaric guests were reveling and feasting below, with more women, children, slaves, and countless livestock surrounding this temporary open-air palace. She looked up and saw nothing but strange foreign men and women with bare chests under the high platform, adorned with leather clothing, horsehair, and bronze, eating horse meat and drinking mare's milk. Everyone was gorging themselves on the grass and land, and they would start pushing and shoving each other at the slightest disagreement. She only felt lonely in the noise. Although Kuldrogo was laughing and shouting in the main seat on the high platform, the object was not her, the bride at hand, but the blood riders below. No one talked to her, as if she didn't exist. She looked down at Illyrio and her brother sitting below, close enough to see her brother's increasingly unhappy expression, yet too far away to say a word. And Sir Yoren next to her brother, he seemed even more serious than usual. Did he also dislike this wedding? The drums rumbled, and women with bare chests danced a strange and wild dance for the cool in front of the high platform. The bride quickly looked away and tried to ignore this scene. Another Dothraki approached the dancer, then 2, 3, until 2 men grabbed the same woman. Strange shouts came from the mouths of the 2 warriors. In the blink of an eye, 2 arak blades stretched out from their sheaths, and the dazzling white light flickered with the shadows of the blades. This weapon has a scythe-like curved blade, and almost every Dothraki warrior carries them. She had seen countless of them in less than half a day. Now, she had also seen its sharpness and danger. After a few breaths of dazzling white light colliding, the arc of the knife slashed across one person's waist, and the spine and abdomen were immediately cut in half, almost breaking in the middle. The man then fell to the ground, and red and green internal organs flowed onto the ground, covered with a layer of dust. No one stopped this blood feud. Governor Illyrio had reminded her in advance, any Dothraki wedding is considered a failure if it doesn't result in at least 3 deaths. She had a premonition that today's wedding would probably involve more than 3 deaths. The slaves carried away the corpse, but the other warriors were still in high spirits, and the winner casually pulled over a dancer to enjoy. The wedding went on as usual. A servant slowly walked towards the high platform carrying dishes. Kuldrogo and the princess were the first to choose food, and then it was the governor and Viserys' turn. Viserys' self-esteem was hurt again and again with each round of food that was delivered. He himself didn't think Kuldrogo was of a higher status than him, let alone his sister sitting above him. Your Majesty, please rest assured, this is just a courtesy to the owner of the wedding. Kul naturally understands how honorable you are. Ellen persuaded Viserys while presenting the dishes. Ellen didn't want the Beggar King's momentary impulse to ruin the wedding. His plan still needed time. Viserys immediately believed it. I knew it. Drogo is still sensible. I am the king of the 7 kingdoms, of course he should understand the hierarchy. Humph. For the sake of my sister's wedding, I will let him off this time. Ellen nodded silently in agreement, secretly rejoicing that the Beggar King's voice was not loud enough, and Kuldrogo did not understand the common tongue of Westeros. Unlike the princess, Ellen was very satisfied with today's wedding. The messy layout on the grassland, the grass-woven palace, the simple high platform, various wedding rituals, and the guests who were allowed to carry knives and swords everywhere. Death was not surprising. Ellen knew how to use the power here. Drogo's Khalasar was huge. 40,000 warriors and countless women, children, and slaves were all gathered on this grassland, and the consumption of supplies and management difficulty was huge. Of course, Drogo could not personally handle all the affairs, he had deputies to manage his tribe. These people were Kos, responsible for commanding the various Khas under the Khalasar. With the Khal at the head and the various Kos as assistants, the power exerted by the 40,000 warriors was enough to make Pentos tremble. The Pentos governors doubled the city's defences for this reason. But no one dared to guarantee how effective this would be. As everyone knows, Pentos is the weakest of the free cities. The peace agreement with the Bravasi stipulates that the Pentos people must not possess more than 20 warships, must not hire mercenaries, contract with free mercenary groups, or maintain any army beyond the city guard. What's the use of just having huge city walls? Thank you for the Crown Prince's guidance. Ellen decided to use this substantial inequality and contradiction between the Dothraki and Pentos. The dishes had been served. Ellen and Jorah Mormont looked at each other and left silently. Now it was Jorah's turn to worry. In just a few days, Jorah felt that he had spent more energy than in the previous few years. Varys the Spider's task for him was to lurk around the dragon siblings and pass on information, but he didn't ask him to do anything proactively. A very good deal, but the Spider probably won't live long. Jorah still believed more in the power of the Iron Throne. Ellen. This Crown Prince's attendant was much more troublesome. He wanted him to be a matchmaker, he wanted him to kill people, he wanted him to protect. His gaze turned to the Kos on the other side. Bono, Yahako, these two Kos didn't directly kill Ellen, did Drogo know? Jorah touched the hilt of the sword at his waist. I hope less blood will be shed today, let alone my blood. The sun was gradually setting in the west. Kuldrogo stood up and clapped his hands, and all the drums, shouts, and feasting noises stopped abruptly. Drogo helped Daenerys up. The ceremony of presenting the bride price began. Viserys walked forward with 3 maids. 2 were Dothraki with apricot eyes, black hair, and brown skin, and 1 was a Lyseni girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. Good sister, these are not ordinary slaves. Chapter 46, Night of the Crimson Scythe. Daenerys was surprised to find her memory of the Westeros terrain had become quite vague. She took some interest in the map. The scroll slowly unfurled. She recognized it. First, the north, then the Riverlands, the Vale, the Iron Islands, the Westerlands, the Crownlands, the Stormlands, and the Reach. Finally, Dorne. Was there another section of the scroll, perhaps including the Summer Sea? But she immediately realized she was wrong. The scroll's rod rolled to the end. On the last section of the map lay a chilling gleam of silver. She only blinked, and a large hand, so fast it left after images, snatched up the silver light, completely removing it from her sight. In less than a breath, the painful, angry shouts of the man beside her jolted her awake. She blankly raised her head. Ah! A dagger was sticking out of the Khal's chest. Ser Jorah was currently clashing with the Khal's scythe using his longsword. The crowd above and below the platform instantly erupted. The muffled sounds of tables being pushed and benches kicked, the metallic scraping of swords being drawn, loud shouts of cursing and screaming, and panicked cries for help all rose together, sounding like the end of the world. Daenerys knelt weakly, staring blankly at everything. The quicker guests and servants scrambled and crawled away from the platform that was about to turn into a purgatory. 3 blood riders and a dozen Dothraki warriors rushed towards the Khal. Aerys snatched the Beggar King's sword from his waist and headed straight for Illyrio, who was in a panic not far away. The fat Magister had no guards now. The Magister only managed to say no before the sharp steel sword pierced his throat, then was ruthlessly pulled out. The Magister fell to the ground, convulsing. Blood foam choked him, forcing him to cough, then there was the tearing sound of air, followed by silence. Aerys laughed heartily. The Dothraki immediately cast fierce, bloodthirsty gazes. Aerys hurriedly dropped the blood-stained sword, dragged the frantically screaming Beggar King to Bono and Yahako. He spoke in the Dothraki he had memorized, Kul Bono, Kul Yahako, are you not planning to take countless gold, wine, and slaves? Now is the only chance. We still need the city gates. Bono and Yahako did not react. Aerys was truly anxious. Jorah Mormont could be chopped into pieces by the scythe at any moment. Suddenly, a frenzied, sorrowful, ear-piercing cry came from the Khal's direction. Aerys tried to suppress the surging ecstasy in his heart. Drogo was dead. Bono and Yahako exchanged glances. 2 days ago, the iron-clad Andal brought this little man to them, and the little man told them a delicious plan. Drogo was dead. Drogo had no sons. After him, who would get this Khalasar? Every call was a possibility, but the greater possibility was that the Khalasar would disband from then on, with the Khals taking their cause to become new, smaller Khalasars. But what if 1 or 2 Khals could avenge the Khal, filling every warrior with gold and slaves? More and more warriors were drawn to the chaos on the platform. They saw many corpses and blood. The Blood Riders and the iron-clad man were running around in circles as they fought. They looked towards the Khals. Kulbono and Kulyahako recognized many of their own cause among the crowd. The two exchanged another glance, understanding each other's decision. 2 scythes flashed simultaneously, rushing towards the other witnesses on the platform, severing 7 or 8 lives in a few breaths. Kulbono raised his arms and shouted, "The Pentashi Magisters colluded with the Blood Riders and these fellows to kill Kuldrogo. Avenge the Khal. Kill these grass-eating scum." Kulyahako also gave the order, "Quickly, save that iron-clad man." Their 2 cause were the strongest, and with intentional or unintentional arrangements, the 2 Khals men accounted for more than half of the crowd at this time. The warriors obeyed the Khals' orders, howling as they joined the battle, immediately gaining an overwhelming advantage. Someone wanted to speak the truth of Kuldrogo's death, but the incoming scythes became more and more numerous, more and more swift, drowning out all words. What awaited them was a bloody purge. Finally, Ares, who had been waiting for the result, relaxed and slumped to the ground. It seemed he wouldn't die. The battle ended quickly. Kulbono and Kulyahako led the warriors away from here separately. The area near the platform became eerily quiet. Yora, covered in blood, stood in front of Ares, leaning on his sword. Drogo was indeed a warrior worthy of respect, perhaps much stronger than me. Ares smiled and asked, "Then how is it that you are standing here?" Yora also smiled. "He was injured first, and he doesn't have this armor that only cowards would wear, plus it was close-quarters infantry combat. It would be abnormal if I were to be injured. The Dothraki are still better at fighting on horseback." Ares pretended not to see the few bloody marks on Yora's body. In fact, he also understood that these injuries were nothing in a melee. He looked around. The Beggar King was cowering beside him, muttering to himself. Daenerys was still on the ground, unmoving. He got up and walked towards the princess. "Your Highness, Ares is honored to report to you that we will soon be returning to King's Landing. The Crown Prince is waiting for you." Daenerys turned her head stiffly, looking in horror at this servant she had never dared to trust. Sir Yora comforted her, "Your Highness, don't panic. As long as you don't resist, we will definitely not harm you, nor will His Majesty the King and the Crown Prince." Daenerys understood who the Majesty he spoke of was, the usurper, not her brother. She curled up helplessly. Kulbono and Kulyahako, who had left earlier, had finished dealing with all the outsiders and gathered 2 groups of warriors, riding over on horseback. Dothraki language rang out. Yora translated for Ares, "They want you to fulfill your promise, open the gates of Pentos, and let them avenge the Khal." Ares sighed sadly, "The Magisters are too irrational. How could they assassinate the Khal just because they feared his power? What a pity, now the beautiful Pentos must endure the Dothraki's wrath. Tell them they can depart now." The setting sun had completely disappeared. Pentos had not yet noticed anything unusual. The suburban grasslands were neither near nor far, and it was not strange for the Dothraki to make some noise. Besides, would mounted barbarians attack a city at night? With this thought in mind, coupled with the fact that the city gates had long been deserted, the city guards who were paid to do their jobs naturally enjoyed their dinner, paying no attention to the sharp blades in the shadows. The sound of hooves approached. A figure slowly rode in from outside the city gate. The mercenaries saw the signal. The guards who were eating together were completely unprepared. Nearly half were killed or injured upon contact. The other guards and scattered civilians in the distance were unable to support them in time. However, before the mercenaries could control the city gate. Rumble! The ground trembled violently, and a low, oppressive thunder roared from outside the city, mixed with faint cheers and howls. The charge of 40,000 cavalry. Yora led the dragon siblings through the city gate first. After joining Ares, their speed became faster and faster, galloping wildly towards the western harbor. Just a few breaths later, countless Dothraki cavalry howled as they rushed into this fragile city gate. The mercenaries who had harbored illusions and the few guards who were still struggling instantly turned into mud under the hooves of the horses. The Dothraki entered Pentos. Amidst the blood-red scene, Kulyahako, appeared. He announced sternly, the Pentoshi people used gifts to exchange for the great Kalasar's forgiveness, but now they have broken the sacred oath and killed Kuldrogo with despicable means. Unforgivable. He raised the crimson scythe high, as punishment, revel to your heart's content. Warriors. Oh. Woo. The Dothraki cavalry's bloodthirsty and greedy desires were completely ignited. They must avenge the Kul. No sheathing of blades for the night. Everything in sight was a lamb to be slaughtered. Fortunately, Ares and the others had already escaped to the ship prepared in the harbour. A moment later, Ares would not have known whether the Dothraki's scythe was a friend or foe. The ship had already weighed anchor. Ares and Yora stood on the deck, watching Pentos become brighter and brighter. That was the firelight representing death. Ares was excited and uneasy. The mission had been completed, but would Her Highness be willing to see the blood night of Pentos? Disordered footsteps came from behind. The captain and a dozen sailors held swords. Hey, Ares, you know I'm a Pentoshi. Ares hid behind Yora. Your families aren't in the city, are they? What do you want to do? The burly captain spoke slowly and deliberately. More money. How much money? Ares didn't know, but he would soon find out. Chapter 47. Black Castle. How many people are there in Pentos? Joffrey abruptly asked Tyrion on the snow bear beside him. Tyrion looked distantly at the wall, which was faintly visible in the distance, not understanding why Joffrey would think of Pentos at this time. 400,000 or 500,000, perhaps more, with another 1 or 2 million outside the city. Joffrey nodded without speaking, but in his heart, he marveled at Elan's significant actions, realizing that Pentos was suffering a calamity this time. He had witnessed the bloodbath in Pentos. Although the time to acquire runes for location, reconnaissance and backtracking was after Elan set sail, without preparing a medium in advance, he couldn't observe Elan's every word and action. But there were many mediums targeting the city-state of Pentos, Pentos gold coins, amber wine, saffron, dragon eggs, and so on. Using these mediums, he could use the location rune to determine Pentos's position, and then input the position information into the reconnaissance rune, allowing him to see Pentos from the north. From then on, Joffrey observed the situation in Pentos at regular intervals every day. Last night's blood and fire declared his victory. Daenerys and Viserys were about to fall into his hands. Pentos had suffered a heavy blow, and the relationship between the Dothraki and the free trade city-states would inevitably deteriorate, likely returning to a state of opposition. In this situation, would the Dothraki cavalry still cross the narrow sea by ship? Varys and Illyrio's conspiracy had come to naught. Without the Beggar King and Daenerys as shields, little Aegon, whom they truly supported for restoration, had lost a major aide and would find it difficult to continue accumulating strength silently on the continent of Essos. What would Varys's reaction be? Joffrey knew that Varys would know about the news of Pentos in a few days. At that time, would the spider in the Red Keep flee or kill? He chose to believe in Hannah's determination and the Lannister forces remaining in King's Landing. Your Highness, Benyon reminded, will be at Castle Black in half a day. It's the largest of the 3 remaining active fortresses of the 19 castles along the wall, and the headquarters of the Night's Watch. Joffrey glanced at him. Now is not the time. After I ascend the throne, I will begin to improve the situation of the Night's Watch. Benyon almost couldn't help but ask, how long will that be? But fortunately, he didn't say it out loud. Benyon was not the only one who lamented the decline of the Night's Watch. Lord Commander George Mormont, Old Maester Aemon, who was already 100 years old, and all the brothers who felt a sense of belonging to the Night's Watch could only watch as the Night's Watch declined day by day. The Night's Watch was once the hero guarding the safety of the 7 kingdoms, but now it was just a ragtag force defending against wildlings. The Night's Watch was once regarded as a symbol of honor and dedication, with many knights, nobles, and good families volunteering to join, but now only criminals and unpopular noble offspring were willing to serve reluctantly. The Night's Watch once had tens of thousands of brothers, stationed in 19 strong fortresses, enough to resist all foreign enemies, but now there were less than 1,000 people guarding the hundreds of miles of the wall. Benyon believed that the wildling woman was telling the truth. Why not believe it? Thinking about it carefully, there were too many abandoned places on the wall. What did one secret passage matter? He could bring people to block this one, but if the Night's Watch continued to decline, who should be sent to block the next secret passage? Even then, would the wildlings still need to sneak across the border? Benyon silently looked at Joffrey's back. Besides the north, the Crown Prince was the only important figure who still believed in the value of the Night's Watch. The scene of King Robert's sudden death flashed in his mind, and Benyon quickly shook his head vigorously, throwing this sinful thought far away. Gods forgive me, that was not my intention, absolutely not. Benyon couldn't see what was ahead. A secret smile flashed across Joffrey's lips. The time was midday, and the cold wind howled. The wall became larger and larger, higher and higher in their eyes, gradually occupying the entire world. The sunlight shone directly on this blue and white giant serpent stretching across the end of the world, and the crystal-clear blue light flickered with the giant serpent's breathing. Gods! Its boundless body seemed to hold all the ice in the world. Tyrion was serious and silent. Having witnessed the existence of magic, how could he still doubt the greatness and mystery of the wall? Being able to keep the terrifying others out, the wall must have vast power. The group moved closer. They saw Castle Black under the wall, but even though it was large enough to accommodate thousands of people, it was just an insignificant corner under the wall. More than a dozen people in black robes rode over to greet them. Your Highness, all the brothers of the Night's Watch have been waiting for a long time. It is a great honor for all of Castle Black to serve you. The speaker was a bald old man with a long beard. Joffrey nodded with a smile. Benyon stepped forward and hugged the old man. Lord Commander, I'm back. The Lord Commander patted him hard on the back. Benyon, you're finally back. I've lost all my hair waiting. The wall really can't do without you for a day. Even Benyon rarely showed a smile. Commander's hair was already gone, how can you blame me? Everyone burst into laughter. Lord Commander Mormont also greeted Yoren and the others one by one, warmly exchanging greetings. Joffrey listened to their conversation, gradually matching the names in his memory with these faces. Beside Mormont was his steward, Edison Tollett, Dolorous Ed. The ruddy fat man was the Night's Watch's first steward, Bowen Marsh. The stern-looking man seemed to be born without a smile. He was the Night's Watch's master-at-arms, Alliser Thorne. The man with the protruding chin was the first builder, Uthel Yarwick. The one-armed strong man had a big belly, Donal Noy. He was once the blacksmith of House Baratheon, personally forging Robert's warhammer and Stannis's first sword. The assertion that Robert is true steel, Stannis is pure iron, Renly is pretty but worthless bright copper came from his mouth. Stannis certainly seemed like pure iron, Renly well. Joffrey really wanted to believe the part about Renly, but as long as Renly was not dead, he would not underestimate this great enemy. Lord Commander Mormont came to Joffrey again. Your Highness, Castle Black has deteriorated a lot. We have tried our best to tidy up the King's Tower, and I hope you will not dislike it. Joffrey waved his hand at Mormont. You've troubled yourself, Lord Commander. How could I be picky? He looked determined and encouraged the Night's Watch in a loud voice. You are all brave heroes. The kingdom will not forget your contributions. I guarantee in my capacity as Crown Prince that the Night's Watch will regain its past glory, in just a year or two. The crowd cheered and thanked him gratefully. But Joffrey knew in his heart that perhaps only Tyrion, Jon, who had not seen much of the world, and half of Benyon and Yoren truly believed his words. In any case, the secret of the wall was beckoning to him. The team drove into Castle Black. Joffrey smelled the ancient, powerful, and sweet magical aura. I really want it. Chapter 48, Ancient Magic. The Black Castle after sunset was even more desolate. Bowen Marsh shivered as he pulled out a large bunch of keys, trying each one to unlock the heavy iron chains that secured the fence. Can't we go beyond the wall tomorrow? Tyrion couldn't help but complain. Although the power of fire magic made him unafraid of the cold, what scenery could he see at night? My nephew isn't in a hurry. I just want to fulfill my wish immediately and sleep soundly tonight. Joffrey said perfunctorily. What he looked forward to was not beyond the wall, but the secrets within the wall itself. The intangible magical sense ahead constantly lured him. The clattering sound of falling iron chains rang out. Joffrey's eyes lit up. He couldn't help but sigh, getting in and out of the wall was really not easy. Ahead of the narrow, winding tunnel were two more equally heavy iron gates that required a dedicated person to unlock. Above each iron gate were murder holes for releasing dark arrows and ice stones, making the defense extremely tight. For the wall, which had no city gates, this kind of tunnel was the most convenient and only passage in and out. Unfortunately, even these tunnels were almost abandoned. Joffrey only knew of two tunnels that were still usable, one was here, and the other was the abandoned Nightfort's Black Gate. He guessed that the three-eyed raven might have let the Skinchanger and Snow Bear in through the Black Gate. After all, This old guy was once the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, which was understandable. Overall, the wall truly lived up to its reputation as a massive fortress. Just before stepping into the tunnel, thinking about the descriptions of the wall's magic, he couldn't help but hesitate. Would this magic only harm the others and monsters, or would it be unfriendly to all mages? He took a step back slightly. Tyrion strode into the tunnel. Good, Tyrion didn't shatter or die suddenly. Joffrey continued forward with peace of mind. 1 step, 2 steps. But the moment he took the 3rd step, a hazy light screen swept across his entire body. The wall's magic. A wave of dizziness from the inside out seized his soul. Am I caught? After a few breaths, he was relieved to find that he was still alive, without pain, with clear thinking, neither cold nor hot. He noticed the changes in himself. The abundant magical energy in his body was suppressed into the runes, making it almost impossible to mobilize. At the same time, continuous magical energy flowed slowly from the runes into the walls of the wall, drawing streaks of light. At least 2 kinds of runes. He concentrated his mind and gazed into the depths of the wall, following the colorful magical energy flowing from his body. Identical patterns were absorbing these dissipating magical energies. The patterns flickered, but his perception of them was steadily increasing in a regular manner. Why? He immediately thought of the similarities and differences between formless source energy and luminous magical energy. Could it be that these runes could reverse magical energy into source energy? Many fantastic ideas burst into his mind in an instant. He quickly wrote down the shape of the pattern. Then he began to search for the whereabouts of other runes. The group stopped. Jon silently guarded Joffrey's side, preventing non-existent enemies. Bowen Marsh was not in a hurry at all. Tyrion, shivering all over, couldn't help but urge, "Good nephew, spare my life. It's so cold here that it's about to freeze my little thing off. Either hurry up and get out, or just go back." Tyrion paid the price for his negligence. His confidence in fire magic made him forget to put on a few more layers of fur or cotton clothes. Now that the magic had failed, he finally personally felt the infinite power of the wall's ancient magic and ice. Joffrey withdrew his gaze with satisfaction. "Alas, for the sake of my uncle's little thing, I have no choice but to temporarily put aside the scenery beyond the wall. Chief Administrator, we're going back the way we came." Upon hearing this, Bowen Marsh's red face turned even redder, almost purplish. At such a cold moment, he left the warm stove and bedding to lead the Crown Prince, but the result was so hasty. Bowen glared at Tyrion fiercely. "Lord Tyrion, if there is a next time, please wear more clothes before coming out, I am also very busy." As soon as he finished speaking, Bowen led Joffrey and Jon back quickly, directly ignoring Tyrion. Tyrion followed helplessly. The iron gate at the tunnel entrance slammed shut, and it would not be opened again tonight. The moonlight was clear and cold. The lights in the Black Castle went out one after another, with only the King's Tower and a few places on night duty still lit. The team that arrived at the Black Castle this afternoon had already disbanded. Benyon and Yoren returned to their positions, and the wildling Osha was being guarded, waiting to identify the secret passage. Joffrey took Jon and Tyrion to stay in the warmest rooms on the 2nd floor of the King's Tower, and Rain, Ghost, and Snow Bear each stayed with their master. Under the reflection of the orange-red firelight in the fireplace, Joffrey sat on the bed, absent-mindedly stroking Rain's fur. Rain probably had obsessive-compulsive disorder. Every time he saw his smooth fur messed up, he had to purr a few times to protest. "Alas! I can't sleep." The increase in mental strength had greatly reduced Joffrey's drowsiness, and today's harvest had also stimulated his thinking to be more active. This was certainly a good thing, but for someone who used to be able to lie in bed all day, it was also a kind of sad price to pay. Fortunately, the power exchanged for this price was precious enough. Joffrey closed his eyes and practiced communicating with the 3 intangible new runes. The runes of extraction, restoration, and anti-magic. Contrary to what he had guessed before, it was not the same rune that took away magical energy and reversed it into source energy in the wall, but the effect of the extraction rune and the restoration rune working together. The extraction rune could absorb magical energy within a certain range. The restoration rune could restore the excess magical energy of each rune into source energy and store it, and then supply each rune when magical energy was in short supply. The anti-magic rune, as the name suggests, could greatly suppress the operation of magical energy within a certain range, and its expressiveness was almost equivalent to prohibiting magic. The anti-magic rune was probably the most harmful to the others and whites. Once magic failed, they, who relied on magic to maintain their existence, might directly melt. No wonder the others had not moved south for thousands of years. There was just one thing he couldn't figure out: he could control the opening and closing of the runes on his body and output them specifically, so how did the anti-magic runes in the wall not interfere with the operation of other runes? Perhaps it was the effect of an unknown fourth rune? But he didn't find it. It was also possible that the power of this unknown rune was leveraged through some kind of ritual, and it was not left on the wall or other tools. If that was the case, what kind of ritual would it be? Having harvested so many runes through archaeology, Joffrey had put away his pride. The predecessors may not have recognized the essence of magic, but being able to leave behind so many magical relics was enough to prove the high level of their magical application. He and the ancients were just reaching the same goal by different paths, and there was no need to distinguish between superior and inferior. What other magical things were there about the wall? He operated his spirit and reviewed the countless memories in his consciousness, finally settling on a few short lines of text. The Black Gate of Night Fort, the talking weirwood door, the weirwood face that opened the passage for the Night's Watch brothers who answered the oath. Worth exploring. Chapter 49. The cold night was followed by a day that was almost as freezing. The fire in the hall blazed brightly. Among the hundreds of black-clad Night's Watchmen, Joffrey and his companions, not wearing black, stood out. The atmosphere at the feast was slightly awkward. Although the high-ranking officers sitting near the head table behaved properly, the ordinary members of the Night's Watch were clearly at a loss with the arrival of the Crown Prince. After all, some of them had been sent here for violating the law and in the name of the king. Should they be happy now? Bang! Tyrion, having downed a belly full of fine wine, jumped brazenly onto the table. As expected of a man with a full endowment of humor, a few self-deprecating body jokes, coupled with vulgar gestures from his short legs and arms, immediately aroused a long and noisy roar of laughter in the hall. The atmosphere at the dinner table finally gradually warmed up. People sat together in groups of 3 or 5, boasting and cursing, singing off-key, vulgar tunes without any scruples, holding wooden wine cups and competing in drinking, playing guessing games and betting, and from time to time bursting out shouts of joy or regret. The high-ranking officers at the main table also gradually became active, just like they usually were during meals. "Your Highness, try this, it's absolutely fresh." Lord Commander Mormont enthusiastically handed Joffrey a fresh crab that had just been transported from Eastwatch by the sea. Joffrey took it with a smile and tasted a few bites. Preserved by the perennial ice, the crab was indeed delicious. However, the focus today was not on satisfying his appetite. Joffrey asked, "Lord Commander, I heard that Benyon is taking the wildling Osha to find the possible secret passage today." Lord Commander Mormont nodded. "Benyon plans to set off after the banquet is over." Joffrey feigned curiosity. "In the Lord Commander's opinion, is the secret passage Osha speaks of real or false? Is there any possibility of it existing in the place she mentioned?" An aged voice sounded, "That place is the long-abandoned Night Fort. I still remember a few fragments of information. Perhaps the girl is talking about the Black Gate hidden deep in the well." Joffrey turned slightly and saw a blind old man with a face full of wrinkles. Maester Aemon. Aemon Targaryen, once a noble prince of the Dragon Dynasty, was sent to the citadel by the king to become a maester, and later chose to come to the Night's Watch to serve because his younger brother had become king. He is exactly 100 years old this year. Without a doubt, Aemon has a profound influence on the Night's Watch. "I see. Thank you, Maester Aemon, for answering my question. You are truly knowledgeable," Joffrey said with a chuckle. Aemon faced Joffrey, as if his eyes could still see. "It's just fulfilling the duty of a maester. I've only lived a few more years, remembered some things, but forgotten even more. Too modest. You are definitely a role model for maesters." Joffrey deliberately sat next to Aemon. "Maester Aemon, would you like to consider returning south to perform your duties? It would be a good way to alleviate your homesickness. Strictly speaking, my father and I are both your blood-related descendants." Joffrey's words were not false. Regardless of the Targaryen bloodline of Orys Baratheon, the ancestor of the Baratheon family, to put it closer, his great-grandmother Rhaelle Targaryen was a genuine dragon princess. Although this had nothing to do with him personally, others didn't know that. Aemon waved his hand, "Let everything in the past be gone. My home is here. It would be good to be buried under the Black Castle." Joffrey didn't say anything more and returned to Lord Commander Mormont, who looked a little nervous. What is the Lord Commander thinking? Does he think I wouldn't like Maester Iman? We are real relatives. Lord Commander Mormont quickly denied it, absolutely not. Of course, I believe that the Crown Prince is acting out of good intentions. All right, just kidding. Joffrey looked expectant. I really want to see what the Night Fort looks like right away. Lord Commander, please inform Benyon that I will be setting off with them. Lord Commander Mormont had no way to refuse. Joffrey stood up. Where is Osha being held now? I want to see her. Lord Commander Mormont looked at the slightly tired Chief Administrator. Bowen left his food with difficulty. The wildling Osha was tied up in a dark room next to the barracks. The room without a stove was very cold, reminding her of the hard days beyond the wall again. Creak. The door opened, and light and cold air poured in together. She narrowed her eyes and turned her back, waiting to be grabbed. The door closed again, and a fire lit up in the room. Osha. A clear male voice echoed in the room. Osha raised her head, and a delicate face appeared before her. Your Highness, why are you here? Joffrey smiled slightly, to see if you figured it out. Osha didn't understand. Joffrey originally didn't pay much attention to this minor character and thought it would be fine to hand her over to the Night's Watch. But after sorting out last night's gains, he realized that he needed a test subject, not too strong, not too weak, and preferably without any support. He thought about the people in the Black Castle and still felt that Osha met the conditions best. Osha, does the secret passage you mentioned have a weirwood door with a moving human face on it? Your Highness knows about it. Joffrey continued to press. After you lead the Night's Watch to find it, what do you plan to do? Osha shook her head blankly. You know the others have already appeared, right? Osha instantly thought of those terrifying white shadows. The north is not safe. She must escape to the warm south. I can accept your loyalty. Osha blinked and immediately knelt before the Crown Prince. Your Highness, my sword is yours. I am willing to be loyal to you, I can. Joffrey squatted down and whispered, thank fate, you will gain unimaginable power. Don't move, it might hurt a little, bear with it. Osha saw the Crown Prince slowly draw out a terrifying dagger. The hilt seemed to be made of black crystal, and the dark blade seemed to be full of magic, definitely better than any steel. What is he doing? Osha thought in horror about all kinds of tragic possibilities. The blade gradually approached her forehead. The sharp chill seemed to have penetrated deep into her soul, making her tremble uncontrollably. The Crown Prince pressed her shoulder with his other hand. It's going in, don't move anymore. How could she not move? Osha struggled frantically, but the Crown Prince only glared at her, and her whole body calmed down on its own. Weird. White Walkers are not as terrifying as him. She could only watch in horror as the blade got closer and closer to her, closer and closer, and finally disappeared before her eyes. Clang. TSS. The sound of fresh leather tearing made her scalp tingle instantly. No, that's my scalp. The swollen skin, with bloodstains on the inner layer, was casually thrown on the table, and blood flowed along the opening, seeping into her familiar brown hair. This scene was her last clear memory. Warm droplets kept flowing down from the top of her head, and her vision was soon filled with red blood. Then came all kinds of terrifying pain, as if 1,000 steel needles were piercing her fingertips, as if countless beetles were gnawing at her brain and flesh, and countless numbness, nausea, dizziness, noises, flashes, and other strange sensations. After two shadows took something from her, she completely fell into despairing darkness. Ugh! A ghostly scream echoed from the small house. Bowen Marsh, who was waiting outside, shuddered, and his hair almost stood on end. What tricks is this Crown Prince playing? Too perverted. Joffrey put the experimental product into the brain, closed the last piece of the frontal bone, and used recovery magic to heal all the wounds, finally breathing a sigh of relief. This surgery was not easy. As soon as he pushed open the door to get some air, he saw Bowen staggering a few meters away. Your Highness, your hands. Joffrey subconsciously looked down, two blood-red arms. Medical surgery, just got a little blood on them. Bowen tentatively glanced into the room. The wildling woman was still relatively intact, so where did so much blood come from? Bowen hesitated for a moment, but still couldn't help reminding him, Your Highness, for treating illnesses, the Black Castle actually has a lot of herbs that can alleviate pain that can be used, there's no need to be so, simple. Joffrey slapped his thigh, that's right, How could he forget this? But looking at the suspicious Bowen, Joffrey just confidently explained, "Let me tell you, anesthesia cannot be used for every surgery." Bowen chuckled. Chapter 50, The Invisible Core. They were almost at Long Night Castle. Osha still didn't dare to look directly into the Crown Prince's eyes. That was hell. Looking at those clear and beautiful eyes, who could have imagined that he could create hell without hesitation? She had been told that a core had been successfully implanted in her skull. How did it get in? She didn't dare to think about it too much. The despairing pain that forced her to relieve it every moment gave her the courage to ask questions. But that gentle and calm voice said to her, "Anesthesia is bad for the brain, so I didn't use it on you. No need to thank me, just remember it in your heart." She did remember it in her heart, not with gratitude, but with fear. She didn't dare to have the slightest hatred or rejection. What if that core could let him know her emotions? She quickly cut off all disrespectful thoughts. No, His Highness is completely considering my well-being, otherwise how could I have obtained this kind of power? Thank you, Your Highness, long live Your Highness, and I will always be loyal to Your Highness. Joffrey could actually understand Osha's resistance. He pried open someone's skull, could he really not allow them to be unhappy? This kind of thinking is very dangerous. Ding! A crisp, gem-like collision sound came from his waist. He took out a piece of completely transparent, colorless glass. A faint light message was displayed on the glass screen, May 10, 9 a.m., Osha, a commoner from Ghost Shadow Forest City in the Outer Province, sends greetings to the throne. It seems that Osha has been trained well. She has been using the core to send greetings on time for the past few days, without delaying for even a minute, not bad. He clicked on the message box, and 4 options appeared below. Send the throne as well. Osha, a commoner, today is another pleasant day. Send read. Send do not disturb frequently. Do not reply. Joffrey smiled wickedly and decisively clicked on the first option. The information rune image in the glass instantly transmitted the preset information to the core. The information rune image in the core triggered the preset operating path and transmitted the received information to Osha's brain. So Osha saw another crown prince that only she could see waving to her and saying the same words as the previous few days, "The throne is well." Osha, a commoner, today is another pleasant day. Of course, only she could hear this sentence as before. Nameless gods, if this happens a few more times, I'm afraid I will never forget this face, never forget this voice. Osha carefully scanned the light blue interface that only she could see. The so-called daily tasks had disappeared, and only some unchanging text and patterns remained on the interface. There was also that small box that moved every once in a while. So, today's task is completed? Osha's tense nerves finally relaxed a little. The task was very simple, but she still didn't dare to be negligent. She didn't know why this so-called core could do these things, but she understood that this dreamlike interface was definitely not normal, and she was enduring a never-ending, invisible gaze. The light blue interface constantly reminded her of the existence of the core, and freedom was already an impossible luxury. There was no escape after all. She silently tasted the bitterness and despair as she had done in the previous few days. But for some reason, a thought suddenly popped into her chaotic mind: why escape? What's so bad about this? She almost instinctively mocked this thought, but a strange magic drove her to keep thinking about it, and the more she thought about it, the more reasonable it seemed. That's right, why escape? His Highness has neither harmed me nor lied. This core does have extraordinary power, it's simply a gift from the gods. No, it is clearly the will of the gods. Pain is the breeding ground for faith. Osha's expression gradually became fanatical. That's right, the gods bestowed such great power to send His Highness to fight against the White Walkers, save the world, and establish a paradise on earth. The divine envoy has chosen me, why should I escape? Osha found a reason, no longer resisting, and allowed this invisible shackle to be embedded in her soul. The contract magic energy in the core immediately merged into her consciousness. According to the contract, Osha willingly offered everything, and the Crown Prince would allow her to continue serving loyally, until death. Joffrey sensed the contract taking effect. He was very satisfied. Osha's will was considered firm, so one can imagine how shocking the core would be to ordinary people, and the contract rune would shine brightly. He was even more satisfied that the core was already able to operate independently and even had a slight surplus. This version of the core had information, a restoration rune image, and one-time contract magic energy and fire magic energy added to it by him. The information rune image was set to continuously input a translucent rectangular blue light screen and unchanging text patterns into the host's brain, and transmit the received information to Xiaobai, which was equivalent to a signal receiving device and a display. The restoration rune image could restore the magic energy that was not used up in the core into source energy for storage, which was equivalent to a battery. The contract magic energy could allow people to sign an unbreachable, overbearing clause. Once something unexpected really happened, the fire magic energy could also make the core self-destruct, destroying the host. In general, it was a bigger version of a mobile phone, except that it didn't rely on code and programs, but rather on the information reaction paths he wrote one instruction at a time. And his transparent glass Xiaobai acted as a server and was also a more sophisticated mobile phone. There were hundreds of core writing instructions. Input a translucent rectangular blue light curtain and unchanging text patterns to the host, input white numbers that change with time, regularly input daily tasks and send preset specific information to Xiaobai according to the host's reaction. The writing instructions of the server Xiaobai were several times more complicated. Although it was very cumbersome, it was much easier than the programmers of the previous life who wrote code. There was no need to consider how to implement the instructions, and any instructions could be added at will, which was the charm of magic. Of course, Joffrey painstakingly made this core mainly to feed back to himself. He had already touched the upper limit of magic. Redundant rune energy storage limit, 100 units, recovery speed, 5 units per day. The total storage limit of magic energy produced by all runes is 2000 units, and the recovery speed, related to the total amount of rune energy, limit is 100 units per day. Note, 1 unit is based on 24 hours of single rune production. Under these restrictive conditions, the upper limit of his personal magical strength had been locked. Breaking through this shackle obviously required a lot of time. Before that, he needed to bypass these restrictions to obtain more power. The core was a good result. In the past few days, the core had only consumed less than 1 unit of magic energy in total, and the magic energy produced had already been more than 10 units, all of which had been restored into source energy for storage. The output of magic energy clearly exceeded the normal accumulation speed of runes. Why? Joffrey thought of the 8 heads in Wolfwood and the mysterious connection between source energy and soul consciousness. He verified a bright road: the human soul can bring more source energy, and then be collected and stored through various media for rune conversion and use. Endless magic power. Chapter 51. Black Gate. The ancient night fort was born alongside the wall and declined with the night's watch. Abandoned for over 200 years, every breath of air here is undoubtedly filled with decay and emptiness, every inch of the view permeated with scenes of ruin and desolation. Under the glow of the setting sun, Joffrey and the others stepped inside, occasionally startling fat rats in the dark corners. What do they live on? No one knows. Hurry and lead the way. Benyon and several black-clad brothers kept a close watch on Osha's every move. Osha silently walked ahead, relying on her memory and the marks on the ground to find the path to the kitchen, where the well and the steps within it were located, and where the Black Gate resided. Joffrey's figure rose and fell rhythmically with Rain's movements, and, to be honest, it was quite fun once he got used to it. Tyrion's gaze remained almost constantly fixed on his left arm, as if he could see the tiny sparkles inside through his skin and flesh. This thing was called Magic Net Core 1.0 official version. That's right, Tyrion had become Joffrey's second test subject. Jon was the third. Joffrey also reached a crucial conclusion: the location of the core's implantation had no effect on the collection and conversion of source energy or magic energy. In other words, Osha's version of the core was now declared a limited edition. After all, implanting it in the wrist or other areas was more acceptable and easier to promote and popularize than directly stuffing it into the brain. And the changes to the Magic Net Core 1.0 official version were not limited to this. After creating Osha's core, Joffrey quickly realized the impending difficulty: a shortage of rune energy. Among the 3 pillars of magic: source energy, rune energy, and magic energy, rune energy had become the biggest bottleneck for popularization. Although the source of source energy was unknown, it was known that it could be continuously absorbed through runes and converted into magic energy, and could be briefly brought into the material world through human thought for use and storage. Magic energy was derived from source energy and would also rise with the popularity of source energy. Only rune energy could still only be slowly accumulated daily through the runes or rune reflections in the consciousness. Runes and tools were useless, it had to be done by people. This was extremely unfavorable for the initial popularization of magic. Creating a core like Osha's required consuming 7 units of rune energy, which required the accumulation of 7 rune reflection owners, mages, for a whole day. It was estimated that there would be 200 to 300 mages by the end of this year, and the 200 or so units of rune energy they provided daily would only be enough to make a few dozen cores, which was simply insignificant. Therefore, the new core took a different approach and did not use any rune reflections. Its material was selected from gems or crystals that could also absorb and store source energy, and the communication function was provided by constantly consuming information magic energy, which needed to be recharged regularly. Simple to the point of being crude. But the functionality was hardly weakened, it only reduced the core's battery life and energy storage limit. Looking at it optimistically, this could also better control the user's movements, regularly replenish magic energy, regularly collect source energy, and avoid unexpected loss of control. Thinking about it this way, it was just right, perfect. But Tyrion obviously didn't think so. He couldn't help but complain to Joffrey through the information rune reflection, "This core is completely useless to me." It was indeed useless. Joffrey immediately changed the subject, "Has your snow bear learned communication magic? What does it know? This is very important and directly relates to our safety." Tyrion curled his lips. Snowball's words are hard to understand, it might be saying that 2 people had entered its body back then. Joffrey acted very serious. "Don't underestimate him, if I'm not mistaken, that person is the famous Bloodraven, Brynden Rivers. The sorcerer with 1,001 eyes." Tyrion gradually became serious. "That's him, he already has more eyes, constantly spying on the 7 kingdoms. Maybe Bloodraven is waiting for us on the wall right now." Joffrey actually felt that this was possible. In terms of motivation, the true intentions of the 3-eyed raven were difficult to determine, but of course, he could kill anyone. In terms of strength, the 3-eyed raven had been beyond the wall for so many years, and with the weirwood trees as his eyes and being a green seer of the children of the forest, he probably wouldn't cower. The raven's eyes were indeed powerful and might be able to track the group's movements. And there was the wall. Joffrey raised his head and looked through the broken holes at the dim grey-blue giant serpent. The magic-suppressing runes of the wall limited his magic, and he really didn't know what the situation was like outside now. Perhaps the wildlings were waiting outside? Or perhaps it was the children of the forest. Joffrey regretted that the 3-eyed raven himself couldn't possibly be there. Bloodraven, who had merged with the weirwood tree, could hardly move and could only remotely command, making him extremely disgusting. What a pity, he couldn't be killed in the short term. Joffrey's schedule was tight, and he didn't have the time to venture deep into the haunted forest to snipe the 3-eyed raven, and he didn't know how strong the others, who were gradually becoming active beyond the wall, were. Acting rashly would be too arrogant. It was the development stage, and he couldn't be too reckless. "Your Highness, my lords, this is the entrance to the secret passage," Osha said, pointing to a well several meters wide. Joffrey came back to his senses and saw that rain had already carried him to the great kitchen of the night fort. The huge brick oven gaped emptily, many rusty meat hooks hung from the ceiling, and rows of scarred and stained butchering tables lined the walls. It was a normal kitchen, but it was here that the rat cook had chopped the Andal prince into pieces and used one of the ovens to bake delicious human meat pies, which the prince's father had praised. Those who knew this story couldn't help but scare themselves. Joffrey looked towards the center, where a pale, twisted weirwood tree squeezed out of the stone cracks and grew all the way to the ceiling, and directly below the tree was the dark well. Benyon cautiously leaned against the well's edge and looked inside. There are indeed steps on the well wall. Tyrion approached. It's bottomless. Can these steps really allow a snow bear to climb up? I'm a little scared. Joffrey jumped off Rain. What are you waiting for? Just go down and try it. One by one, the group moved into the well. It was like going deep into the sea. With each step down, the damp well wall became colder, the visible range became darker, and the empty well in the middle looked more like an abyss. They could only cling tightly to the well wall and advance with difficulty. Time passed so slowly that their eyes had already adjusted to the darkness, and after a long time, they finally saw the Black Gate. Named the Black Gate, but it was white weirwood. The wood had the face of an old man who had died thousands of years ago, seemingly emitting a faint white light in the darkness. But the light Joffrey saw was not white. The face opened its eyes. It asked, "Who are you?" The voice was weak, but it echoed continuously in the silent well. Joffrey reminded Benyon, the oath. Benyon slightly puffed out his chest, without hesitation. I am the sword in the darkness, the watcher on the walls. I am the fire that burns against the cold, the light that brings the dawn, the horn that wakes the sleepers, the shield that guards the realms of men. The face said, go then. Then, its mouth opened wider and wider. Chapter 52. Ghost Shadow Forest. The night was deep, and after confirming the existence of the secret passage, the exhausted group did not continue forward, but climbed up to the well opening and rested for the night. Early the next morning, they finally passed through that human face. Behind the face was a narrow and slowly ascending underground tunnel. They approached the surface step by step, and the light ahead gradually changed from the size of a horizontally placed grain of rice to a crescent moon, the sun, and the entire world. They walked directly into the Ghost Shadow Forest. Benyon turned his head and looked. The trees grow so fast. Are we already this close to the wall? The Night's Watch never allowed a tree to appear within 1,000 meters of the wall, but outside the abandoned night fort, the Ghost Shadow Forest was about to spread to the foot of the wall. Joffrey saw countless weirwood trees. No wonder it's the roosting place of crows, there are too many eyes. He sighed, then leaned against a weirwood tree, his head slightly raised against the bark, and flipped through the countless images that flooded in. Sure enough, someone had been here before, and not just humans. A Night's Watchman searching ahead shouted urgently, Chief, there's a lot of blood on the ground here, and the bodies of our brothers. Benyon turned and plunged into the forest in 2 or 3 steps, and the other Night's Watchman followed. The routine is old, but it works. Joffrey stepped through the rainwater. Uncle, John, let's go take a look too. Be careful. The scene was terrible. At first glance, it was difficult to tell how many bodies there were. They were many large and small pieces of meat, abandoned in the white snow and frozen into colored ice. At least 5 good men. Benyon said in a low voice, stating his judgment. Tyrion frowned and asked, is it normal for black brothers to be killed here? The night fort has been abandoned for 200 years, and the place where the corpses appeared is not far from the entrance of the secret passage. Tyrion smelled a conspiracy. Is Bloodraven really still alive? A Night's Watchman held up a person's head with a stiff expression. I recognize him. He ate Instructor Illyria's stick with me, and was later sent to support Shadow Tower. He's from Shadow Tower. Another black brother said, maybe they were a patrol team sent out by Shadow Tower, chased by wildlings and fled here. It's more likely that they encountered wildlings who had just come out of the secret passage. Another ranger was eager to try. The brothers were killed not long ago, at most 3 or 4 days. The wildlings definitely haven't gone far, and we're on horseback, so maybe we can catch up in a day or 2. Benyon was silent for a moment, hesitatingly asking the Crown Prince, should your highness retreat back to the wall first? How could anyone be embarrassed to say they wanted to go back after hearing that question? Joffrey understood Benyon's decision. After all, he's the first ranger, how could he shrink back in the face of trouble? But the Night's Watchman's statements are so consistent, doesn't anyone suspect anything? Joffrey glanced at the few rangers who had spoken earlier. Let's go together, the wildlings are not to be feared. The rangers showed their housekeeping skills, searching for subtle traces on the white snow, and actually saw the traces of living people. The team sped towards the northwest. Progress was smoother than expected. In half a day, they discovered the wildlings' open-air camp. Benyon lay on the snow behind the slope, silently observing. At Benyon's request, Joffrey took Tyrion and Jon and hid in the forest behind, so as not to startle the enemy in advance. The 3 spoke quietly through magic. Tyrion was very uneasy. Are the Stark's brains all so upright? I bet there's a conspiracy here. Jon didn't know what to say. Benyon was his closest uncle after all. Joffrey didn't care. A bland journey also needs more adjustments to be exciting. Maybe after today, we can make friends with legendary creatures. What legendary creature? Tyrion heard the deeper meaning. 3, 2, 1, look to the left. Tyrion twisted his neck, and many tall and short figures instantly appeared at the end of his vision. Alert! He shouted. Benyon, who was in front, had just turned around when he saw several black brothers moving. Daggers went in and out, and the blood-red paint splattered between the throats and hearts of his other brothers, staining the white land. No! He waved his sword at the traitors, but they retreated faster, merging into the wildling pile in the distance. Ha ha ha, Benyon, you can't run this time, can you? 20-odd wildlings walked out of the wildling camp. More figures gradually emerged from the forest behind them. Benyon slowly moved to Joffrey's side. Traitors! Scarface, Red Hand, Hound, Kos, why did you betray us? Benyon questioned, his face flushed. Those people did not respond. The wildling leader said for them, Benyon, you don't know, there is still that lord outside the wall. It doesn't count as betraying the oath for the Night's Watch to be loyal to him. Joffrey directly stated, you're talking about the former Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, the Three-Eyed Crow, Brynden Rivers, right? Wildlings, tell him that I will personally pay a visit, provided you can still go back alive. The many wildlings looked at each other and laughed. The wildlings were not in a hurry to act. They had more manpower surrounding this place. Joffrey wasn't in a hurry either. He was waiting for those little guys to get close enough, too late to escape, and then he could make friends with them. Tyrion confirmed his guess, this must be the children of the forest mentioned in the books. As tall as himself, with big ears and golden eyes, deep chestnut skin with spots, 3 fingers and a sharp claw for a thumb. Tyrion breathed heavily with excitement. This was a living legend, alive. Good nephew, be sure to catch a few alive. It's hard to imagine what the 7 kingdoms would think of this, more fun than dwarfs. She, the only one in the tribe who could understand the common tongue, rubbed her hands together, humans, take back your impolite words. We are only here for the person who should not be here beside you. Give up resistance, and you can return safely. The wildling leader also echoed, that's right, put down your weapons and you can live. Joffrey looked around. In front and behind were hundreds of wildlings, and on the left and right were the children of the forest and dozens of skin-changers beasts, with eagles and crows and other birds circling overhead. He was struggling with what method to use to solve the enemy. Now he has 500 units of fire mana. It is known that 1 unit of fire mana can boil 10 tons of ice-water mixture, which is about 1 million kilocalories / more than 4 million kilojoules of heat, which is equivalent to the heat released by 1 kilogram of TNT. Injected directly into the wildling's body? He still has to approach the enemy and avoid attacks, not handsome enough. Breathe fire? The combustibles are too scattered and cannot be wiped out in one fell swoop. The wildlings began to shout, hey, hurry up and surrender. You kid, kneel on the ground, and I'll give you a merciful death. Joffrey smiled kindly at that person. Art is explosion. He squatted down and pressed his hands on the solid block of ice. 150 units of fire mana were divided into 50 portions and integrated into the ice under the feet of the wildlings and beasts. With a thought, hundreds of tons of ice instantly expanded into high-temperature water vapor, erupting from within layers of solid ice. Bang! TSS! TSS! The fresh water vapor, wrapped in the aroma of roasted meat, turned into a surging white storm. The shattered ice blocks fell back to the ground from the sky, still entwined with wisps of mist or blood. Tyrion took a deep breath. The air was as warm as a summer afternoon in King's Landing. So hot. Chapter 53. Leaf. Can I call you Leaf? The one who shouldn't exist walked across the ravaged ground to her, smiling as he asked. The burning white mist had dissipated, and droplets of dew dripped from the branches above, trickling down her face, warm and comforting. A glance revealed that the cleansed ice and snow forest had become a clean rainforest after a summer rain. But shifting her gaze downward, the icy sand, puddles, blood-soaked chunks of meat, scattered swords, axes, spears, black soil, and broken, fallen trees together painted a picture of death and destruction. 2 humans from the south were ending the lives of all the northerners who hadn't completely died, her own people looking terrified and at a loss. She looked up at the sky again, the raven having disappeared without a trace. The 3-eyed raven isn't a very competent green seer, he probably didn't see any of this happening. Then again, who would have thought that ice and water could explode? She bowed to Joffrey. Leaf, on behalf of the children of the forest, surrenders to you. I beg you not to harm them, this is all my fault. Joffrey admired her gold-green eyes. It is said that your green or red eyes represent the gift of green seeing. Have you never tried to become a green seer? Leaf tilted her head. I'm not qualified enough, am I? Bloodraven is wicked. You know his story, don't you? He's practically the embodiment of human evil. How can you let him dominate your fragile tribe? Leaf lowered her head and said nothing. We can be friends. Leaf, do you know who I am? The one who shouldn't exist. Tyrion knelt on one knee and proclaimed, "Before you stands the heir to the Iron Throne, Prince of Dragonstone, Lord of the Lightbringers, messenger spreading the gospel of the gods, Azor Ahai reborn, destined to defeat the darkness and bring an endless long summer, Joffrey of the House Baratheon, may he reign forever." "Ah, really?" Leaf blinked her innocent eyes and hesitantly offered the blessing, "May he reign forever." Joffrey took a step closer. "The gods have not abandoned you. I can become the protector of the children of the forest. Under me, all living things can work together to face the long night and the calamities of the evil gods. Your companions can return to the tribe and convey my meaning. With the protection of the throne, the south can once again become your home. Of course, you can all come back to the south with me too." Leaf was completely bewildered. Did I convince him? Did I say something? Are humans this kind nowadays? She had no choice but to translate his words verbatim to the 5 members of her tribe. Joffrey patiently listened as they spoke and argued in melodies he didn't understand. His decision wasn't made on a whim. The children of the forest possessed extraordinary magical talent, were gentle in nature, had long lifespans, and faced immense pressure to continue their race. What reason was there to drive them all to extinction? As for his several new titles, since he was putting on an act anyway, he might as well make it a grand one. Messenger of the Gospel, Azor Ahai reborn, the hero king destined to bring an eternal summer. The epic aura that made countless people willing to die immediately filled the air. And the burning sword Lightbringer was practically describing the dragon flame sword itself. "Your Highness," Jon said excitedly, presenting a black sword, Valyrian steel. "The wildlings actually have such a treasure." Joffrey grasped the hilt. "Uncle, you should be able to guess its name." "Dark as smoke, with a slender blade, Bloodraven." Tyrion knew the answer. One of the 2 ancestral swords of the Targaryens, dark sister of Queen Visenya, lost to the Duke Bloodraven. "Do you want it, uncle?" Tyrion chuckled. "It's slender, not short. Has my good nephew forgotten my height?" Joffrey handed it to Jon. "Keep it for now. Perhaps grandfather will like this gift, now that the Lannister ancestral sword Bright Roar has been lost for centuries." The melodies from the children of the forest gradually ceased, and Leaf approached with 2 members of her tribe. "Your Highness, we are willing to serve you." The other 3 children of the forest hid behind the trees, nervously watching the movements on this side. "Very good. I believe you will be satisfied with life in the south." Joffrey took the opportunity to stroke Leaf's hair. "Help me tell those 3 friends to be careful on their way back. The ravens may become their enemies." "Will they?" Leaf didn't know if she could still trust that old man, the last green seer. Was he watching this place right now? Faced with the weirwood trees everywhere in the forest, the sacred trees and final resting place on which her tribe depended, she felt a sense of unfamiliarity and unease for the first time. The moon had just risen. The victorious team returned to the night fort from the Black Gate. Benyon lit a bonfire with a wooden face, chewing on dry flatbread, occasionally taking a large gulp of strong wine. The children of the forest, once thought to exist only in stories, had become their prisoners. Benyon wanted to appear happier, but he just couldn't. He was the only ranger left in the team, and he couldn't blame anyone. His own brothers stabbed their brothers in the back. Who could he blame? It was actually Tyrion, the person he got along with the least, who came over to comfort him. "Look on the bright side, we also killed several hundred wildlings and skin changers. From now on, your rangers' patrols will be much safer. This can be considered saving dozens of lives." Benyon twitched the corner of his mouth. A simple compilation of information would reveal that these wildlings and children of the forest had come entirely for the crown prince, but the Night's Watch had become newly born souls in the battle. Children of the forest. He looked at the 3 small figures beside the crown prince. It was clear that these guys were the main culprits of the attack, but now nothing had happened to them. Benyon really wanted to rush up and take revenge. But he ultimately didn't move a step, only listening to the crown prince and the children of the forest talking. "Leaf, how many members of your tribe are there now?" Leaf sipped mushroom soup in small sips. "There are more than 60 singers like us, and thousands of tribesmen living in the land, trees, and animals." Joffrey verified the data in the book. "More than 60, almost equivalent to extinction. What do you think about sibling love?" "Ah, it's all possible, we don't have such strict restrictions as humans." "Very good." This meant that the descendants of the children of the forest who were inbred were unlikely to have genetic defects, so there was still some possibility of saving them. Joffrey cut off a piece of roasted venison. When we return to the south, you can live in the Godswood of the Red Keep first. It's not very big, but it's enough for the time being. When the time comes. As he spoke, his thoughts returned to the south. The exploration of the wall was complete, and even the children of the forest were already in hand. It was time to turn his attention back to King's Landing. The king had already reached the crossing, and ahead was the neck. And Varys, although he didn't seem to move much after receiving the news from Pentos, how could he be trusted? It was time to go back. Chapter 54, Privy Council Meeting. Varys sat alone in his small chamber. Perhaps for secrecy, or perhaps to be less of an eyesore to the nobles, this isolated little house leaning against the Red Keep's walls had become the exclusive domain of successive spy masters. But Varys knew its secrets, knew the Red Keep's secrets. The vast underground tunnels, the little birds listening in the wall cavities of the nobles' rooms, the secret passages connecting the various rooms of the Hand's Tower to the outside, the climbing paths leading from the Red Keep to the cliffs by the sea. As long as he pulled the lever in his bedroom and walked down the stairs beneath the flagstones, all of these would become the spider's most powerful weapons. He only considered Petyr a difficult opponent. The hasty demise of the Targaryen dynasty had buried these secrets of the Red Keep along with it, leaving only the spymaster himself as the informed party. But Petyr was different. This cunning fellow didn't value honor and face as much as other noble courtiers. As soon as he arrived in King's Landing, he courted minor nobles, small merchants and even the Red Keep's servants everywhere, desperately gathering all kinds of information. Using his position as master of coin, he established brothels and taverns throughout King's Landing, and bestowed favors upon the lowly in the Red Keep, eventually becoming the second beneficiary of the Red Keep's secrets. Varys often felt uneasy about this. Petyr, who only cared about himself, Petyr, for whom power was paramount, what if this guy discovered his true secrets, would he choose to make them public? Varys didn't know the answer, but he once thought it was an impossible hypothesis. Who could know his true identity? But 3 days ago, he received news: Kuldrogo was dead, Illyrio was dead, the scimitars had destroyed Pentos, and the dragon siblings were missing. The Dothraki broke the contract. Who did it? The message mentioned the Squire Ellen and Yoram Mormont, but were these two the masterminds behind it? Joffrey? Varys didn't believe it. All intelligence showed that Joffrey was still arrogant, willful, and ignorant. Exchanging the lives of elite soldiers for a giant lion, forcing singers to write songs, openly conducting the so-called king's game before even becoming king, taking the Stark children deep into the tombs without permission, and insisting on leaving the team to go north to the wall. Only the sudden enlightenment to learn swordsmanship with the Kingslayer could be considered wise. No, it could only be said to be normal. How could such a person be the culprit behind the destruction of Pentos? Varys quickly thought of the envoy who went to Pentos with Ellen to buy dragon eggs, Petyr's subordinate. Did Petyr know something? What good would destroying Pentos do for him? Varys asked himself for 2 whole days. Until now, the hazy mist had finally cleared a little. Repeating it countless times, Varys read the note in his hand word by word, as if he was seeing it for the first time. This was the latest intelligence delivered this morning: Jester, Beauty, with Squire, Bearpaw on ship sailing west. Jester referred to Viserys. Beauty was Daenerys. She should have married Kuldrogo, and at the appropriate time, led tens of thousands of cavalry to trample the 7 kingdoms of Westeros, making the lords and people yearn for the salvation of the true dragon again. Squire was a new code name, but Varys knew it referred to Ellen. Bearpaw was Yoram Mormont, a former important informant, but Varys had now removed him from the list and put him on the assassination list. The content was only this sentence, but Varys understood a lot. Viserys and Daenerys, these two were the real targets of the mastermind, and the disaster in Pentos was just an additional price. Varys knew that Petyr had always been concerned about his lineage. Petyr's territory was a rocky wasteland on the smallest Littlefinger of the Fingers Peninsula in the Vale, almost uninhabited, hence his name Littlefinger. Because of his humble birth, the Tully sisters he loved or loved him had married others and become duchesses. Because of the decline of his family, his path to promotion was not smooth, and he was often ridiculed. Only after he demonstrated his ability and became the master of coin did those cold words barely move into the shadows. Could he be the murderer? Because he wanted a Targaryen wife with a noble background? Create chaos? To curry favor with the king? Varys sorted out the logic, but always felt that something was wrong. In any case, he had finally found the whereabouts of the Targaryen siblings, and even if he guessed wrong, he could get the correct answer by looking at their final destination. It was time. Varys destroyed the note, tucked his sleeves in, and walked out of the dark little house. A Privy Council meeting was being held in the small hall behind the Iron Throne, although there was neither a king nor a prime minister. Several ministers with different expressions looked at Varys, who had just entered. The Spider's news isn't very well informed. I knew about this the day before yesterday, Peter teased. Renly's face was displeased. Varys, you've been a little negligent. The matter of Pentos is so big, but you only informed everyone today. Varys slowly sat in his dark seat. My lords, forgive me, the bloody massacre of Pentos is not a secret, I just didn't want to waste the precious energy of the lords. Today, what I want to say is not just these. Everyone's eyes flickered for a moment. Grand Maester Pycelle coughed a few times. Varys, cough, Earl, it's too hot, be considerate, cough, I'm an old man, hurry up and say it. Varys and his 3 colleagues looked at each other one after another, and smiled sweetly at Peter. There is good news, the Targaryen siblings are not dead and have not escaped. He handed out a handwritten detailed report. Sir Yoram Mormont, who is looking forward to returning home, and Ellen, the former squire of the Crown Prince, have obtained them and are sailing towards us. Renly and Pycelle read it one after another, and the parchment finally fell into Peter's hands. Varys's gaze moved with the paper. I don't know which lord's work it is, please tell us, everyone will congratulate you. Peter's expression was well maintained. Lord Varys, are you serious? Renly couldn't help but sigh, my good brother will probably be happy for a whole year because of this. Grand Maester Pycelle stroked his long white beard. If this is true, it is a great joy for the entire 7 kingdoms, and the people will no longer have to worry about the Targaryens' revenge. Varys clapped his hands gently, that's right. According to the itinerary, maybe we can see the remnants of the evil dragon within a week, congratulations. At that time, the king will definitely reward the meritorious people heavily. Peter smiled without saying a word. Varys proposed, my lords, why don't we send a fleet to meet them in advance, so as to avoid regrettable accidents? Peter called for a glass of red wine. I couldn't agree more, what do you think, my lords? Varys's proposal was unanimously approved. A fat man who looked very docile presented Grand Maester with iced honey milk. Thank you, good apprentice. Pycelle took a small sip. My lords, if there are no other matters, today's meeting will end here. Varys silently watched Peter's departing back. With a fleet to meet them, it will be difficult for the Targaryens to get away from the court's sight. What else can Peter do? What else can he get? Could it really not be him? The Crown Prince, Joffrey Baratheon. Varys stayed alone in the small hall for a long time, motionless. Chapter 55. He saw it. He saw a White Walker. He fled south directly from the haunted forest but was caught in the new gift. Damn it, only one step away from the north. He wasn't executed on the spot. His former brothers said they would use his head to remind everyone, deserters will not have a good end. He lived a few more days because of this, but he also endured such a long time in torment and fear. Gods, is waiting for death so painful? Sometimes he thought it would be better to die in the new gift, or even die gloriously in the haunted forest, but sometimes he suddenly felt hope, thinking that something would stop his death. And now, the Black Castle is close at hand. It's time. He was dragged off his horse, and one end of the hemp rope binding his hands was held by a brother, while a strong hand behind him clamped him and kept him moving forward. He stopped struggling and instead stared blankly at everything around him. The towers and stone walls were grey and black. No night's watchman would say they were beautiful, but now he felt that this was the best castle in the world. The ice and snow were piercingly cold, and the campfire was so weak that it could be extinguished at any time. Almost every year, brothers had their fingers, toes, and ears frozen off, but now he was willing to live here for 1,000 or 10,000 years. More and more brothers came out of the houses. No one spent any effort to talk to him, only indifferent, mocking, vicious, and excited eyes and expressions. But he really wanted to have a chance to have a meal with these brothers again and get through another cold night. He also wanted to go to Mole's Town one more time, even if it was just once. This time, he would definitely plant the seed in the deepest place, regardless of whether she would raise it. Thump! 2 right hands suddenly pressed him down, his knees hurt so much, and the snow was so cold. But he didn't care about any of this anymore. This at least proved that he was still alive, that he could still feel pain, feel temperature, and feel the warmth of the palm on his shoulder. Simon! He saw the Lord Commander's lips opening and closing. The gods have given you this right. Say a last word, quietly meet your judgment, and go to see the gods like a good man. His eyes turned to Long Claw in the Lord Commander's hand, a Valyrian steel sword, which must be very sharp for beheading. An unspeakable force made him struggle again. Lord Commander, I saw a White Walker. The others are real, not a story, they are real, not a story. He wanted to stand up, but the two hands on his shoulders pressed him down hard. Lord, I was just too scared, give me another chance, I am willing to go beyond the wall again. I can find the others for the Night's Watch. The Night's Watchmen watching the execution looked at each other. This wasn't the first time a deserter had said this year, and patrol teams had been wiped out more than once. Wildlings don't have this ability. Could it be that something strange really happened? The Lord Commander's grey-white beard trembled. Have you finished your last words? He instantly lost all strength. The two right hands immediately pressed him onto the thick tree stump next to him. A large area of dark red blood occupied his vision, and the smell of dirt and blood filled his nose. By the King of the Andals, the Roiner, and the First Men, ruler of the Seven Kingdoms and protector of the realm, of House Baratheon. He finally recalled the appearance of his hometown. The golden wheat danced like waves, the rich floral fragrance that could not be avoided, the father who would pat his head at every turn, the mother who would make sweet snacks had a warm and soft embrace, and the girl whose eyes could speak. Geo, I hereby sentence you to death. The long sword was raised high, cutting through the air so that he could hear a subtle sound. He closed his eyes. The sound of horses' hooves gradually became louder, as if it was in front. Am I already dead? He opened his eyes and tried to stretch his neck forward to look. Black clothes, grey clothes, red and gold clothes, he saw a small chestnut-colored fairy. A child of the forest. He heard the Lord Commander murmur. He rekindled his hope, it's true. What I said is true. This is a child of the forest, the others are beyond the wall. Clang! He saw his neck spurting blood. The Lord Commander said, perhaps, but you shouldn't have fled the wall. His head rolled a few times, and in the moment before falling into eternal darkness, his eyes reflected the bare ankles of the child of the forest. Lord Commander, we're back. Benyon glanced at the headless corpse, his voice hoarse, only us. Jeor Mormont shifted his gaze from Leaf, what happened? Let's go, we'll talk in the hall. Joffrey led Leaf over. The secret passage is real. Who knew there were so many wildlings outside hunting down these poor little things? The wildlings certainly weren't willing to let us go, and the result, Lord Commander, you saw it. Joffrey gave Benyon a look, and Benyon remained silent. I see. The Lord Commander sighed, now there will be large sections of the wall unguarded again. Your Highness, please emphasize to the court that Mance Rayder, who calls himself the King Beyond the Wall, is recruiting a wildling army. Now it seems that the others are probably not just rumors. Joffrey said solemnly, of course. I will fully support it. The Night's Watch will receive at least 500 reinforcements within half a year. Thank you for your Highness's understanding. The Lord Commander looked at Leaf again, this one, is a child of the forest. Leaf bowed, Lord Commander, I can speak your language. You can call me Leaf. Boom. The Night's Watchmen watching couldn't help but exclaim, as if they had seen an animal learn to speak. Although all stories depict the children of the forest as powerful and wise beings, who would regard them as equal beings when they suddenly see their so different appearance? The Lord Commander quickly signaled everyone to disperse and led the Crown Prince and others away. The Night's Watchmen reluctantly watched the child of the forest enter the room, and the solid wooden door closed heavily. After a moment of silence, they completely exploded, jumping, shouting, and hugging each other, venting the wild excitement in their hearts, as if they had just won an epic victory. Being able to see the children of the forest, who only exist in stories, with their own eyes, is worth it in this life. Your Highness, what are your plans next? Lord Commander Jeor brought a cup of hot mead with honey to the Crown Prince, his tone seeming to carry a hint of anticipation. Joffrey said with a smile, life at the wall is unforgettable, but unfortunately, my father has already travelled half the journey. I promised to catch up with the caravan before King's Landing, so I have to set off as soon as possible. The basilisk lizard hasn't found an opportunity. He has to see the king off in the riverlands further south, and before that, he must rush to a place within 2 days' journey to prepare to clean up the situation. I'll leave early tomorrow morning. The Lord Commander's expression softened a little. I wish your highness a smooth journey. Joffrey raised his glass. Thank you for your kind words. And the Red Keep, it's time. Urging the mirror rune, Hannah, far away in the Red Keep, was still within his perception. He saw her sitting in front of the mirror. He sent Hannah the final signal. Action in 7 days. Chapter 56, Hannah. The sun was bright. The Crown Prince's chamber was tall and spacious, with a vast view. Hannah leaned by the window, looking out, taking in most of the Red Keep. The prince's favor granted her the privilege of observing the workings of the court. It had been 4 months. The Red Keep had no king, no queen, and no princes or princesses. The 4 members of the small council each did as they pleased. The courtiers didn't know who to turn to for instructions. Petitions to the throne room had long ceased. The servants simply repeated their daily tasks, maintaining the status quo. During the day, the Red Keep was bustling with people, lively and peaceful, seemingly no different from before. But Hannah had already sensed the undercurrents. Beneath the empty iron throne, she saw the courtiers sharing a gluttonous feast, the delicacies named power and money. She saw Peter Baelish, the master of coin, increasing the speed and scale at which he acquired brothels, taverns, and other businesses in King's Landing, with countless courtiers and their lackeys sharing in the profits. No one knew what Littlefinger was doing with the treasury and taxes. She saw Varys, the master of whisperers, spending longer and longer in that dark little room, even missing the weekly small council meetings. The prince had told her that the room was connected to all the secret passages in the Red Keep. She saw Grand Maester Pycelle summoning many young serving girls, one after another. His apprentice, Samwell Tarly, who had entered the palace on the prince's orders, had become almost a full-time servant. She saw the Master of Laws, Renly Baratheon, dealing with legal matters with increasing leniency, spending his days frolicking with Loras Tyrell. And the rumors of the Rose of Highgarden were likely the work of the Tyrells. These days, people in the Red Keep and the city were praising her beauty, comparing her to the fairest winter rose, even though these people had never seen her. Why mention the winter rose? With her keen intuition and experience in court life, Hannah quickly thought of Lyanna Stark, the king's former betrothed. Marjorie Tyrell was plotting to take Queen Cersei's place? The Lannister versus Tyrell struggle was another secret and dangerous court game, and many would die in unknown corners because of it. Hannah no longer cared about these things. She knew that once the prince's goals were achieved, all of the Tyrells' efforts would be in vain. The prince had sent 7 messages through magic, each shorter than the last, all of which were instructions regarding the affairs of the Red Keep and King's Landing, without telling her anything else. But she guessed. If King Robert could still reach King's Landing alive, why would the prince send the signal action in 7 days the day before? King's Landing in chaos, the king dead. This was what would happen in a week. And she would serve as the prince's eyes, mouth, and arms in the Red Keep, examining the courtiers, conveying orders, and dealing with rebels. Steward Hannah, do you have any instructions? An unremarkable middle-aged man stood respectfully behind her, asking softly. This was a lucky commoner who had first been fortunate enough to enter the Red Keep to work, and then accidentally noticed by Hannah, the new steward of the Crown Prince. Now, he had become one of the deputy stewards. Hannah knew his code name, Hidden Stag. Has anything new happened recently? It's really getting boring without the prince. Hannah waved for everyone to leave. The servants silently walked out of the room, all speculating about the relationship between the two. No wonder this guy became a deputy steward. Hidden Stag handed over a roll of information. A red-robed, red-haired sorceress named Melisandre has recently appeared in the city. It is said that she comes from Asai and is a priestess of the Lord of Light, Arhillar. Hannah unrolled the scroll. Hidden Stag scoffed. Just because of her beauty, many men in the city are about to abandon their faith and prepare to join the embrace of Arhillar. Is that so? I wonder if the men will love the Rose of Highgarden or this priestess more. Gods bless, but hopefully, no one will die. She silently read the words on the paper. Our strength. 13 mid-level officers, 46 junior officers, and 258 soldiers in the King's Landing City Watch. More than 1,000 secret personnel and more than 3,000 peripheral members. 156 Lannister guards, more than 30 attendants, and more than 400 servants. The power that the Master of Coin has identified. 150 mercenaries, more than 10 officers and more than 50 soldiers in the King's Landing City Watch, nearly half of the close courtiers, and almost all of the stewards of the treasury, mint, port, tax farmers, and agents. The power that the Master of Whisperers has identified. More than 500 little birds, nearly half of the courtiers who interact with him, and more than 20 officers in the King's Landing City Watch. The target is alert. Immediate action is recommended. The power that the Master of Laws has identified. More than 20 Baratheon guards, more than 20 mercenaries, more than 50 knights in good standing, and potential allies are difficult to estimate. Hidden Stag looked regretful. There's one more thing. The fleet that set off to meet the remnants of the evil dragon has returned. No ships carrying the Pretender were found on the Pentos route. Lord Varys was probably deceived. What a pity. Gods bless, may they be buried at the bottom of the sea. Hannah shook her head and sighed. She compared this data with that of 2 weeks ago. There was little change in her own people, but there were many more identified rebels. It was obvious that if she continued to investigate, the numbers would probably be more than this. Littlefinger, the Spider, Renly, the Gold Cloaks. Who would want to deal with these 4 forces at the same time? Just a few months ago, she could only stand behind the Queen and salute these big figures, and they wouldn't even glance in her direction. She heard the Queen talking to them, the calm words hiding hidden opportunities, and 1 or 2 sentences involved huge interests that would drive people crazy. Various pawns were sacrificed in the back and forth, while they remained safe and sound. Now, the blade was finally about to be cut on their own bodies. Steward, the decorations you ordered to be sent over are all ready. When do you think we should arrange them? Hannah handed Hidden Stag a note. It seems I don't like it that much anymore. I'll think about it again. The handwriting on the note was beautiful. Action at dawn in 5 days. Arrest the former Master of Coin and Master of Whisperers according to His Majesty's will. Clean up the City Watch rebels. Secretly dispose of Renly Baratheon, who murdered Duke Stannis. The rest of the vassals do not need to be pursued. Seal off the entire city, no entry or exit allowed. Kill without mercy if there is resistance. Invite Duke Tywin to the palace to discuss state affairs. This was a somewhat feasible plan, but it was far from perfect and had considerable risks. The enemy's strength had not been completely investigated. How much resistance would there be? Hannah and Lannister were not enough to issue orders on behalf of the king. What would be the reaction of the courtiers to this? And if it really succeeded, how would it be explained afterward? Hannah was very worried. Why did the prince trust her so much? Why did he think he could succeed? Steward, a small gift, no disrespect. Hidden Stag presented a silver plate with a line of words written in jam. The Hound has arrived in King's Landing. How much use could a warrior be? Hannah was still deeply uneasy, but she couldn't think of any other choice. In any case, she would know in 5 days. Go. Chapter 57. Re-entering Winterfell. Tyrion, supporting himself on a tree, vomited up sour liquid. Joffrey gently patted his back. Hang in there, just half a day more, Winterfell is ahead, we can have a good rest for the night. Half a day? Might as well just kill me. Tyrion directly hugged the tree, refusing to let go. Don't even think about making me move another step today. Today was the 3rd day since they departed from Castle Black. Joffrey, Osha, and the children of the forest rode on the giant lion, while Tyrion, Jon, and Ghost rode on the snow bear. The 2 giant beasts traveled for 10 odd hours each day, and had already crossed over 1,000 kilometers of long distance. The ceaseless bumps and shakes had broken down Tyrion's small frame. Good nephew, I know your magic is powerful, able to make rain and snowballs faster and more enduring than ravens, but why the rush? Joffrey smiled slightly at him. Calculating the time, father has probably already entered the Riverlands, right? Tyrion paused, then released the tree, letting himself fall heavily to the ground. He understood the deep meaning in Joffrey's words. Yes, the king who died under the throne would inevitably cause a bloodbath. How could that be allowed? The Riverlands was neither too far nor too close, just right. Tyrion understood that the speed couldn't be slowed down. At least teach me the magic of the rain and snowballs. He directly started rolling on the ground, looking like he wouldn't give up until he got it. Joffrey glared at him unhappily. It seemed like these 3 rune energies couldn't be saved. Get up and I'll give it to you. Tyrion straightened up, performing a beautiful backflip. Joffrey split off a recovery rune mirror image to Tyrion. After the rest, the group continued onward. On the lion's back, Joffrey took out a few leaves and circulated runes. These leaves were taken from the 3 children of the forest they had released, and could monitor their movements at any time. Whether Bloodraven truly didn't care or was helpless, in any case, the 3 children of the forest safely returned home yesterday. At this moment, the children of the forest were gathering in the cave where the throne was located. Leaf, please help me translate again. Joffrey transmitted the scene and conversation information from the homeland to Leaf, and Leaf also translated the conversation into the common tongue for Joffrey. The two of them watched together. Inside the mountain, the dim cave walls were covered with pale, ancient weirwood roots, like white snakes, like corpses. The weirwood was not alone. Many beasts quietly lay at the entrances of the various passages connected to the cave, while small animals and birds frolicked and played inside, seemingly unaffected by the dim light. The children of the forest silently watched them. A part of the deceased children of the forest lived within these animals. They were both companions and brothers, sisters, fathers and mothers. At some unknown moment, the children of the forest made sounds. 3 of our people have left us. We shouldn't have left the last homeland. The south is no longer our home, it is full of danger and deception. That's right, human oaths cannot be trusted. I don't want to go either. The last green seer is here, where else should we go? This is our final destination. All the speeches were full of resistance and unease towards the south and leaving the homeland. Bloodraven on the weirwood throne quietly closed his eyes. Leaf saw that all 63 singers in the tribe were present. It had been a long time since everyone had gathered so completely. Joffrey wasn't disappointed at all. Less than half of the singers spoke, the rest either nodded in agreement or lowered their heads in silence. He was looking forward to the first person to speak out. A female singer with red-gold mixed pupils stood up. I have a different idea. Everyone turned to look at her. Her tone was mournful. Everyone, look around, look at our tribe, what can we use to resist the cold god of the north? Bloodraven slowly opened his eyes. Only humans can help us continue, we cannot give up even if there is only a glimmer of hope. I am willing to go south to try to make an alliance with humans. Green Seer, please allow me to leave the homeland, the tribe needs humans. Her bright eyes pleaded with Bloodraven. The singers looked at each other, and 7 singers walked to her side one after another, waiting for the Green Seer's decision. Joffrey didn't know what reaction he wanted to see from Bloodraven more. Suppress? Bloodraven was, after all, human, facing more than 60 children of the forest. Did he have this ability? Reject? The children of the forest would be dissatisfied or even resist. Bloodraven's prestige would be gone. Agree? Bloodraven would be fine for the time being, but the power of the children of the forest would be dispersed, which would also be considered weakening the enemy. Bloodraven closed his eyes and said nothing. This was also a kind of response. She offered a leaf to pay tribute to the Green Seer, and then led 7 tribesmen into another slightly brighter cave, which was the way up. Joffrey ended the monitoring. Leaf trusted the Green Seer a little more. Your Highness, the Green Seer should no longer target you, everyone can work together to fight the cold god. Joffrey chuckled. Perhaps. If this crow dares to make trouble again, he will definitely be destroyed before dealing with the White Walkers. Towards evening, they saw Winterfell. Tyrion was now unhurried. I think I understand, even the rain is more important than me. Give me this magic sooner, and we won't even have to spend the night here tonight. Tyrion had already experienced the wonderful use of recovery rune energy. Can it be useful when playing with women and getting tired? He decided to try it tonight. That place last time had a good one, red hair, what was her name again? Remembered, Ros. Joffrey once again urged everyone, remember what I said, we are very anxious, Winterfell must know the danger it is about to face. He looked at Leaf, the gods have given me an epiphany, in order to accumulate strength to resist the cold god as soon as possible, I have to abandon personal feelings, sacrifice myself for the public good, you can understand, right? Leaf knew that humans like to lie, but didn't expect it to be to this extent. Joffrey earnestly comforted, you are a key link, determining the success or failure of the matter, determining the future of countless lives, be sure to prioritize the overall situation. Leaf silently asked the nameless gods to grant forgiveness. Rain and Snowball carried them straight to the winter town outside Winterfell. The winter town was a gathering place for commoners who came to seek shelter before winter, accommodating up to hundreds of thousands of people, but now less than 1/5 of the houses were inhabited. Tyrion was very puzzled as to what the Northmen thought was winter. Could the present time with ice and snow all over the ground be summer? They approached the crowd. According to Joffrey's intention, Leaf and the two tribesmen did not deliberately cover their bodies. Coupled with the terrifying size of the giant lion and snow bear, the entire winter town was quickly and thoroughly awakened. Screams and cries rose and fell. Monsters! Flesh-eating goblins! The adults fearfully dragged their children away to hide in the distance. Only a few children whose parents were not around cast curious and clear gazes. Thump thump thump! The people of Winterfell finally came to greet them. Joffrey recognized the leading old knight. Winterfell's master-at-arms, Sir Roderick Castle. Joffrey was brewing his emotions. Your Highness, Winterfell welcomes you. Joffrey grabbed the old knight. There's no time for pleasantries, something big is about to happen, quickly take me to see Lady Catelyn, immediately. The old knight noticed the faint anxiety and panic on the crown prince's face. And that little goblin. Chapter 58. The charcoal in the stove seemed to burn with unusual quietness. This was the Duke's chamber in Winterfell's main castle, secluded and warm, with only Catelyn, Robb, Roderick, and Joffrey present. Catelyn sat alone by the bed, gazing in astonishment at the three tiny sprites. Robb murmured, "Children of the forest." Joffrey began the conversation, "Robb, since you know about the children of the forest, you must also know about skin changers and green seers, right?" Catelyn looked at her son. Robb nodded, "Maester Luwin told us about them. They can control beasts and even know everything, supposedly. Could these things truly be real?" Joffrey sighed, "Maester Luwin was a respectable scholar. I only discovered beyond the wall that he died to save Bran." Catelyn couldn't bear to hear this and immediately panicked. "Bran is so young, who would want to harm him?" "Green seers." Joffrey said with utmost sincerity, "Perhaps Madam doesn't know, but Bran possesses the talent of a green seer, which is why he was targeted by the green seer Bloodraven hiding beyond the wall." Catelyn finally heard a familiar name, Lord Bloodraven? Brynden Rivers. That's right, the Bloodraven sorcerer exiled to the wall. He later became a green seer of the children of the forest, but he still couldn't transcend the lifespan of a mortal. Therefore. Joffrey paused, observing the changes in the three's expressions. He set his sights on Bran's body, often infiltrating his dreams to devour his soul. Maester Luwin was killed because he discovered the clues. Words are not as good as evidence. These children of the forest were chased all the way by Bloodraven's wildlings and skin changers because they glimpsed Bloodraven's true face, and we rescued them later. Leaf bowed, "Indeed, your excellencies. Talking little sprites that one could reach out and touch." Even the knowledgeable Sir Roderick couldn't help but waver, let alone Catelyn, a mother, and young Robb. Joffrey continued, "Bloodraven was harming Bran the night Maester Luwin was murdered. I helped him repel Bloodraven in a dream. Bran knows about this." Bran was the best evidence. Catelyn couldn't believe it. "What do you mean defeated Bloodraven in a dream?" Joffrey clasped his hands together, "The gods protect me. I was granted extraordinary power, saved Bran, and was guided to the wall to discover the boundless darkness lurking there." He opened his palms, pulling out a string of scorching, paper-thin, smooth fire between them. The light and heat were so real, so docile, that it was impossible to have any doubts. This was definitely not a trick. But that's not the point. Joffrey swallowed the flame into his mouth, and Catelyn and the others' eyes fixed on his face. "Lady Catelyn, Robb, please remain calm next." The atmosphere grew even more tense. Joffrey stared at the two without moving until Catelyn and Robb nodded solemnly before speaking again. "The children of the forest know Bloodraven's conspiracy. That guy is still obsessed with the Targaryens, especially hating Father and Duke Eddard. He's about to make a move, and everyone in the southward convoy may be killed." Most of the Stark family was there. Catelyn stood up with a whoosh, "No." A violent dizziness struck, and she collapsed weakly on her son. Robb also looked panicked. "Father and the others are in danger." The loyal Sir Roderick was even more excited, his white beard trembling. "If it's true, I must immediately go and protect Lord Eddard." Joffrey nodded solemnly, "Bloodraven is too mysterious and powerful. I came here precisely to seek Winterfell's aid, otherwise, why would I stay for even a moment? After all, Bloodraven can launch an attack at any time. Time is more precious than gold. I can only stay here for one night." He urged urgently, I guarantee with the honor of Joffrey Baratheon that these are all facts. Please make a decision as soon as possible, it will be too late if you delay any longer. Catelyn clutched Robb's arm tightly, as if begging her son to make a decision. At this moment, she had completely become a fragile mother worried about the safety of her husband and children, rather than some noble duchess. She also forgot that her Robb was not yet 15 years old. Robb bit his lip unconsciously, turning his gaze to his sworn brother, Jon Snow. Feeling Robb's urgent fear and trust in himself, Jon instantly recalled the more than 10 years of Winterfell life from childhood to adulthood. A serious father, a good brother Robb, mischievous younger sisters and brothers, 1 or 2 family members who didn't like him, the cruel Theon, and the special treatment around him. From the perspective of a bastard, Jon was doing well. Jon never coveted Winterfell, he just wanted to be an honorable man when he grew up, get along well with his brothers, and make his father proud of him. He thought the Night's Watch was the guardian of the 7 kingdoms, a symbol of glory. But Winterfell never told him the truth. The Night's Watch was such a sight? Uncle naturally knew, and father must have known too. No wonder Lady Catelyn never had any objections. Even so, am I betraying now? His Highness's persuasion at that time seemed to still echo in his ears. This is the will of the gods, I cannot refuse, nor can you. Lord Eddard and everyone will not be hurt. Is the guilt of 1 or 2 well-intentioned lies not worth the lives of millions? Think for yourself what the correct answer is. Jon also remembered the scene of hundreds of wildlings and beasts being wiped out in the blink of an eye. How many times could Winterfell withstand that? The scene of first meeting the king appeared before his eyes. The wine-loving, lustful fat man and the heroic young crown prince were so different, as if they had nothing to do with each other. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind like streamers, but all this only took a moment. Jon said, Bloodraven is dangerous and cunning, and even more children of the forest and wildlings are controlled by him. He can also use beasts to launch surprise attacks from thousands of miles away. I'm afraid father and the others will be difficult to defend against. Jon looked directly into Robb's eyes. Even the death of Duke Stannis is related to him. King's Landing has his helpers, so it's not safe there either. Jon hugged Robb tightly. Robb, may the gods forgive me, father needs more strength. I beg you in the name of a brother, act immediately. Robb stiffened for a few breaths, only his eyes were still struggling, then he hugged his good brother's back heavily. The dust settled. Joffrey handed a note to Lady Catelyn, I have already prepared the letter. Please have someone release the raven immediately to explain the danger to Lord Eddard and the others. Catelyn took the note blankly, the convoy is moving, how can the raven fly over? Faced with his distraught mother, Robb could only helplessly remind, the king is in the Riverlands, send the message to Riverrun, and grandfather will handle it. That's right. Catelyn finally woke up. I have to tell father and Ed Muir, I have to tell them, father must have a way. Catelyn rushed outside, only remembering that she had been rude when she opened the door, so she hurriedly said goodbye to Joffrey and the others, and then went straight to the rookery. Robb apologized to the crown prince, then gritted his teeth and made a decision. Please forgive me, your highness. Father ordered me to stay in Winterfell, so it's really difficult for me to leave. Let Theon take 100 elite soldiers with you south. Robb looked at the experienced old master at arms. Sir Roderick Castle only said, please allow me to come along. Chapter 59, Whispers Before the Throne. The next day, at dawn. The east gate of Winterfell was once again crowded with armored knights riding war horses, holding lances adorned with the dire wolf banner. Rain and Snowball, carrying passengers, slowly plodded to the front of the nightly procession. The leading knight was Theon, clad in a set of gleaming black plate armor. His helmet was exquisitely crafted, and the Greyjoy Kraken was subtly etched into the center of his breastplate, but a silver-grey cloak embroidered with a dire wolf was clasped on his shoulders. Joffrey could sense the turmoil in his heart. Rain won't slow down. Theon, do your best to keep up. Hopefully, we can all reach our destination before the Bloodraven attacks. Joffrey waved at him. I'll take the lead. Rain shook its thick mane and shot out of the city gate like an arrow. Snowball grumbled in discontent and followed closely behind. Theon silently watched as the giant beasts rapidly disappeared from sight. He turned back to look at the 100 or so knights in their brightly polished armor, unable to suppress a hint of excitement and pride. He then raised his head. Robb, standing on the city gate tower, nodded emphatically at him, while Lady Catelyn cast an expectant gaze. Theon raised his right arm and waved it forcefully. Departure. The Iron Knights filed out in single file. The sound of hooves gradually faded, and Winterfell fell silent. But for a castle in the daytime, the silence was a bit excessive. Winterfell remembered everything from the past. Since the end of the Usurpers' War, this was the first time it had seen the humans within its walls so quiet and worried. Hopefully, nothing bad will happen. It had been more than 2 days since they left Winterfell. Tyrion was still reminiscing about the slippery rose, unable to imagine that a person's body could eject so much water. Praise the gods! Creating women with pure water, how did they think of that? Absolutely genius. Tyrion was even more enamored with the wondrous power known as recovery magic. What man could resist its allure? He was increasingly curious about the extent of Joffrey's magical abilities. Surely, they were far more potent than what had already been displayed. No wonder he acted so aggressively and recklessly. Good nephew, will the king see the contents of that letter? Joffrey responded with an inscrutable smile. He knew what he was doing. The average speed of a raven's long-distance flight was only 400 to 500 kilometers per day. It would take 4 to 5 days for the letter to arrive, just shortly after the king's landing operation, when the king and others would still be completely unaware. This provided plenty of room for maneuver. After conducting a routine reconnaissance of the king's convoy and confirming that everything was normal, Joffrey focused all his energy on the Red Keep. Remotely controlling the situation in King's Landing was no easy task and required constant vigilance. He activated the runes, and his eyes jumped back and forth between the countless locations within the Red Keep that he had set foot in, searching for valuable targets. Ha! Joffrey smiled, his eyes narrowing. Luck was on his side today. He had caught the rat. Inside the sealed throne room, the spider and the mockingbird were whispering before the Iron Throne. Peter Baelish toyed with a silver mockingbird pin, his shrewd grey-green eyes fixed on the somber and imposing Iron Throne. Varys, after joking around for so long, shouldn't we have a heart-to-heart? The spider followed the mockingbird's gaze. In the dim space, the cold throne transformed into a crouching beast, ready to devour the flesh and blood of all those lured by it. Power, the spider sighed, so alluring, yet always fraught with danger. It truly inspires both love and fear. The mockingbird chuckled. My dear Lord Varys, what do you have to fear? In the game of power, you have long been invincible. The spider was not arrogant. No matter how beautifully the web is woven, it will crumble at the touch of a lion or a fire dragon. Speaking of which, the mockingbird shook his head. Lord Varys's information turned out to be false. The male and female dragons are nowhere to be seen. Everyone was happy for nothing. The spider shifted his legs, finally broaching the subject. Was this not your doing, my lord? The mockingbird widened his eyes. How could you think that? This is the most ludicrous rumor. I cannot accept it. It was perfectly normal to suspect Littlefinger. The spider sighed. If it truly wasn't you, then, I fear we are all in danger. How so? My dear Lord Peter, think about it. Who asked you to send people to Pentos to buy dragon eggs? Who sent a servant to accompany them, only for them to disappear along with 2 fire dragons? Who left a lover in the Red Keep, inexplicably causing the Hound to return to King's Landing ahead of schedule? The spider added, you can't possibly be unaware of who the current Prince of Dragonstone is, can you? The mockingbird was silent. Joffrey Baratheon. Had he become smarter? Was he the one who intercepted Lisa's secret letter? Had he discovered me? The spider appeared uneasy. Since he can do these things, how much do you think he knows, how much power has he gained, and how will he view us, these 2 diligent public servants under the throne? The mockingbird murmured, could those new faces active in the city recently all be his people? He had thought it was all Tyrion's doing, a hidden move by the Lannisters, but the mastermind behind it was actually him? The spider's tone became urgent. More than that, many of my little birds have already sensed danger. Those people are likely about to take major action. Who else in King's Landing could they take action against? Both of them understood. Silence fell. The spider and the mockingbird were both calculating their positions and strengths, trying to convince themselves to trust the insidious fellow beside them. Trust, ha, who would have thought this would happen before today? But the immense danger forced them to endure each other, to endure the risks brought by this fragile alliance. The mockingbird spoke first. He is not a prince. The spider smiled. He knew Peter believed him, which proved his guess was correct. The events in Pentos were likely not related to Peter. The spider whispered, "He is not a prince. We have a responsibility. The king should know the truth within a week." The mockingbird, born for power, calmly shook his head. "It's too late." Having identified the enemy, the mockingbird grasped the main threads in a few breaths. Daring to execute a member of the small council in King's Landing, could the prince's identity withstand it? The king probably wouldn't live long enough to know the truth. The mockingbird couldn't help but admire. A meticulous plan. An attack in King's Landing, followed by an accident befalling His Majesty, while he is still far away in the north. According to His Majesty's itinerary, it's these next 2 days. The spider seemed incredulous. So soon? The mockingbird appeared relaxed. There is enough time to prepare. If you and I cooperate, what threat can those naive little fellows in the city pose? As for what comes after, the mockingbird sighed, we'll just have to take it one step at a time. The king was beyond saving, but he was confident he could take advantage of the ensuing chaos and use it to climb to even greater heights. The mockingbird greedily peered ahead, the Iron Throne within reach. The spider frowned. There are also the Lannister guards. Not all of the King's Landing City Watch are friends. The mockingbird ascended the steps of the Iron Throne, 1 step, 2 steps. He stopped before the throne at the highest point, turned around, and looked down at the spider. "Little birds may not be good at fighting, but I do have some brave friends." The spider smiled obsequiously. That would be for the best. Neither player was backing down. What could Joffrey say? Indeed, ignorance is bliss. Chapter 60. Amidst the heavy breathing of rain and snowballs, Sandor Clegane opened his eyes in the darkness. The moment of truth had arrived. "Begin the operation," Clegane heard Prince Joffrey say. Silently, Clegane climbed out of his bedroll, donned his armor, strapped on his sword, and, reeking of alcohol, pushed open the creaking wooden door of the inn room. The narrow corridor, where one couldn't see their own hand, was filled with the decaying stench of drunkenness and vomit, punctuated by the sudden, meaningless roars and shouts from the rooms, all from hopeless drunks. Thump. Clack. Creak. Clegane had tried his best to tread lightly, but the staircase leading to the tavern on the first floor was more fragile than the back of a dying old man, and with each step, one couldn't help but worry how much longer it could hold. Fortunately, he finally made it safely. "Hey!" He shoved the young lad sprawled out asleep behind the bar like a dead pig. "I'm going out on business, so hurry up and get that damned door open." "Is this how you're guarding the door?" The lad mustered all his strength to barely open his eyelids. This small tavern wasn't prosperous enough to be open all night, like most of King's Landing, it was resting in the darkness. Click. The iron lock on the door was successfully unlocked. "Safe travels, sir, just try not to get caught by the gold cloaks on patrol." Disturbed from his beautiful dream, the lad didn't dare curse the ferocious giant directly, and could only vent his grievances in a roundabout way. According to the king's law, pedestrians were not allowed in King's Landing at night. Although the number of gold cloaks on night patrol was small and they often slacked off, if these greedy wild dogs caught you, losing a layer of skin would be the least of your worries. Clegane didn't bother arguing with this little thing, and strode into the cool air. Still smelled like living people, damn it. He identified the direction and headed straight towards the Dragon Gate, near which there was a gold cloak barracks. Today's task was heavy, but he knew that he had become much stronger. While these gold cloaks were good at bullying people, real sword-to-sword combat, the mountain alone could make them all cry for their mothers. Why did he think of that guy again? Clegane shook his head irritably, but still couldn't control his active thoughts. Now, he probably isn't my match, is he? Clegane turned into an alley. A small figure in the shadows followed him from dozens of steps away, but didn't notice the tall target. Shing! The short, dark figure subconsciously blinked, belatedly clutching his spurting throat, unable to move, only watching the target in front of him become smaller and smaller, darker and darker. Clegane figured this might be a little bird. Varys was good at finding fearless orphans, damn it all. A few months ago, Clegane wouldn't have been able to guarantee that he could find the rat behind him, but now it was different. He had the power of fire and light, the wonders of magic, and a mental strength that surpassed his physical body. He even felt that he could kill all 700 gold cloaks stationed at the Dragon Gate. It just depended on whether these scraps were smart enough. Ahead, a thin man and 7 mercenaries with gleaming blades blocked the way. Clegane stopped. Again? Clegane didn't waste much more time than before. He continued forward, stepping on the steaming, semi-dried bloodstains and charred limbs. Damn, there was a bit of a meaty smell, even more of a disgusting stench, just like that time when he was a child. He decided it was better to use fire less. After dealing with a few more waves of rats, when the sky overhead had already turned a faint blue, Clegane finally arrived at the gate of the Gold Cloak barracks. The still burning bonfire allowed him to see the world within dozens of meters with the naked eye. But Clegane had better eyes. As before, the gate was tightly closed, the solid, tall stone wall had no loopholes, and the walls, wide enough for 2 horses to go abreast, also had guard posts, a dozen ballistæ, and countless firing holes. An inconspicuous man quietly appeared beside Clegane. Merely a few breaths later, 7 gold cloaks in the guard post came out, walking down the wall along the steps without a word, getting closer and closer to the gate. The plan seemed to be going very smoothly. But through the stone wall, Clegane saw the 3 gold cloaks walking behind pull out their daggers. Damn it all! Clegane cursed, simply drew 2 short knives and nailed them into the stone wall, pulling himself up the wall 1 knife at a time. As soon as he climbed up, he jumped forward without thinking, landing right on a fresh pool of blood. The 3 traitors had already finished off their companions. Clegane drew his longsword. The 3 trembled at the same time. Enemy attack! Someone! His head had already flown off. Brothers, wake up, save! Mercy! The gate quieted down, but the entire barracks gradually filled with more sounds. Clegane forcefully pulled open the gate. The man rushed in immediately. Don't be impulsive, guard the gate and don't let anyone slip away. I'll help you distinguish between enemies and our own. Clegane grinned. All nonsense. You think I don't know? The barracks had become completely noisy. This was the smaller of the 2 gold cloak barracks, with about 700 men. The barracks commander was only responsible for logistics, the 7 centurions were independent of each other, and under them were 81 squad leaders and more than 600 soldiers, a mixed bag where countless shady dealings took place. The atmosphere in the barracks had been subtle and strange these days, and the smart guys had long dared not fall into a deep sleep, fearing death in their dreams. Now it had come true. The officers and soldiers who accepted orders from the royal family and the Lannisters took the lead, but those who were coerced and tempted by Varys and Littlefinger's forces were also prepared. The 2 sides broke out almost simultaneously, and those who were unaware suffered the heaviest casualties. The sounds of clashing swords and painful howls rose and fell, bonfires toppled and spread, figures ran back and forth, almost making one think it was a battlefield where 2 armies were fighting. Clegane heard the man beside him filled with worry and panic. It shouldn't be like this, we have far more people than the rebels, 5 of the 7 centurions are our own, and 1 isn't an enemy either, how could it be like this? Clegane snorted. What else could it be? You've been played. In my opinion, show these greedy bastards the glint of swords, and they'll listen. Clegane wasn't alarmed. The barracks had no other passages, as long as they guarded the gate, killed a few more to establish authority, what was there to fear from the gold cloaks showing their teeth? He didn't know how long had passed, but finally, in the vast barracks, there was only the crackling of burning wood. Military officers, whose black breastplates were decorated with 4 golden discs, walked over, followed by hundreds of black-armored, gold-robed soldiers wielding spears. Clegane, quickly clear the way, there's trouble in the Red Keep, we must go to support immediately. The leading officer had a look of impassioned righteousness, as if he were the side of justice. Speaking of which, in a coup, where is there any justice? Clegane sighed, he had to use fire after all. Long live the king! Clegane raised his long sword high, the rich light magic blinded everyone's eyes, fight for the king. He charged towards the army in front, covering their eyes, weeping and wailing. Flames burned fiercely. Like a lava hell.